Chapter 880. A Dragon Claw. It tore apart the entire Blood Demon army's formation and killed tens of thousands of Blood Demons. Old Dragon King. Seeing this, Blood Prison Demon King, who was caught off guard by the Old Dragon King's attack, let out an ear-piercing shriek. In the next moment, his body flashed and blood shadows appeared. Waves of demonic energy condensed on his fist as he ruthlessly attacked the Old Dragon King. Die. Blood Demon Sky, Devouring Hammer. Blood Prison Demon King roared. Demonic chi gathered on his fist, and he aimed it at the Old Dragon King's huge body. The space exploded, and the demonic chi turned into a storm. However, the Old Dragon King's face was still cold as the Daluo Dragon Shadow appeared. Dragon King Divine Fist. He turned around and gathered 10,000 dragons to attack Blood Prison Demon King's Blood Demon Sky, Devouring Hammer. Boom! A terrifying loud sound was heard, and in the space, there were suddenly spatial ripples that were like tsunamis. It surged and spread in all directions. Seeing this, Jotong's face changed, and he quickly shouted, "Everyone retreat." The battle between the Old Dragon King and Blood Prison Demon King took place in the sky above the Blood Sea. Even if the sky fell and the earth cracked, it would not affect the battle here. However, the Old Dragon King and Blood Prison Demon King were fighting in the sky above the northern wilderness region. Given the strength of the Heaven Continent's Alliance army, they could not withstand the terrifying shockwaves from the battle. Seeing this, the Blood Demon army that had been severely injured by the Old Dragon King's attack gathered to give chase. However, at this moment, among the Heaven Continent's Alliance army, rays of terrifying sword radiance shot out. They charged into the army of blood demons, causing blood to splatter everywhere. What? There are more people. Blood Prison Demon King's face changed. The sword radiance could not have come from the heavily injured Heaven Continent's Alliance army. However, this was the front line of the front lines. Even the demon army would find it difficult to cross the Blood Sea and reach this place. Even if this was the home ground of the Heaven Continent's Alliance, it was impossible for reinforcements to arrive so quickly. Could it be? Blood Prison Demon King's face changed, and he quickly looked at the Heaven Continent's Alliance army that had regrouped. Instantly, his eyes narrowed to the size of a needle. Most of the Sky Cloud's continent soldiers who had been severely injured were now unharmed. As for the remaining ones, they were unable to fight due to injuries such as broken arms and legs. However, they still had the ability to survive. How could this be? Blood Prison Demon King's face was filled with disbelief. At this moment, the Old Dragon King's expression changed. Seizing the opportunity, he punched out. Boom! The terrifying power of the 10,000 dragons slaying God Fist broke through the Blood Demon Sky, Devourer Hammer, and slammed into Blood Prison Demon King's body. Pooh! Blood Prison Demon King was sent flying backwards, almost falling back into the Blood Sea. His face turned dark and ugly. He had been careless. However, Blood Prison Demon King was still puzzled. The allied army of Sky Cloud's continent was made up of ordinary clans. The vanguard was made up of humans and beasts. The demon race was one thing, but there might be other races that were extremely proficient in battlefield injuries. But the human race, that was a race that everyone knew didn't have any strange abilities. Even if it did, it was impossible for it to appear on these Essence Transformation Realm and Bright Chi Realm cultivators. At this moment, the Old Dragon King seemed to have seen through Blood Prison Demon King's thoughts. That is all because of Tianyang. If not for Tianyang spending so much effort to refine 500,000 pills and distribute them to the allied army of Sky Cloud's continent. Otherwise, the Blood Demon army would have succeeded. 500,000 pills! Blood Prison Demon King's expression changed when he heard that. 500,000 pills! What kind of concept was that? Even if it was the simplest first-grade pill, multiplied by 500,000, it would still be an arduous task enough to make any alchemist tremble in fear. A peak grade 6 alchemist? Absolutely impossible. Even if one was a grade 6 alchemist and had the soul power of Wuzun, it would be extremely difficult to achieve such a feat. Tianyang's soul power is actually so strong. Blood-prisoned Demon King's heart sank. Looking at the blood demon army that was already in disarray, his face turned extremely ugly. That's right, he had underestimated his opponent. He had thought that with the blood demon mirror devouring and counterattacking the allied army of Sky Cloud's continent, he would be able to decide the outcome of the battle. Now, their connection with the Blood Sea had been cut off by the old Dragon King. Moreover, most of the allied army of Sky Cloud's continent had consumed Tianyang's pills and recovered a certain amount of their combat strength. At this moment, Blood Prison Demon King and the Blood Demon Army were at a complete disadvantage. Blood Prison Demon King could not be blamed. After all, who would have thought that an army of spiritual Sea Realm cultivators will be led by an army of enlightened Chi Realm and Origin Transformation Realm cultivators? Almost every one of them had a healing pill. However, if you think that you can stop us with this, then you are too naive. At this moment, a maniacal laughter came from Blood Prison Demon King's mouth. Seeing this, the old Dragon King's expression changed slightly. He immediately channeled his dragon energy and charged out. Scram! Blood Prison Demon King roared. The blood demon chi on his body exploded and turned into a powerful repulsive force that sent the old Dragon King flying. At this moment, a shining silver crystal appeared in Blood Prison Demon King's hand. This is the space teleportation crystal? The old Dragon King was knowledgeable and immediately recognized the crystal in Blood Prison Demon King's hand. His expression changed instantly. At this moment, Blood Prison Demon King raised his head and smiled sinisterly. I alone cannot stop you. However, what if there are more people? Ancient Shrine, I have kept you for half a year. It is time for you to come out. Blood Prison Demon King roared and channeled his blood demon chi. The blood demon chi gathered on his fist and crushed the silver crystal. Damn it! The old Dragon King's expression changed drastically. He released his dragon energy and controlled the space teleportation crystal, trying to seal the space. However, he was repelled by a powerful force. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was pushed back a few steps. When the old Dragon King recovered, the space teleportation gate had already formed. A few old men with strange blood-red patterns on their faces walked out of the space teleportation gate. Seeing this, the old Dragon King's face instantly fell below zero. Ancient Shrine, you have defected to the Demon Clan. Old Dragon King let out a loud roar as he glared at those people and furiously roared. At this moment, the leader raised his head and looked at the old Dragon King with a shocked expression. Old Dragon King, you are still alive? At this moment, the last person walked out of the space teleportation gate. The old Dragon King's heart sank to the bottom. The fifth elder of the ancient shrine, the fourth elder of the ancient shrine, the second elder of the ancient shrine, and the strongest person in Heaven Continent before the war, a Heaven Ascension Stage Level 7 Elite. Chapter 881. Apart from the third elder of the ancient shrine, who had been possessed by the Demon Emperor and killed by Tianyang, no one else was present in the ancient shrine. Almost all of the top 5 elders had already arrived. At this moment, the great elder of the ancient god temple spoke. Old Dragon King, I didn't expect you to survive and break through to Heaven Ascension Stage 7. It seems that the battle with the demon race has also brought you a lot of opportunities. The first elder of the ancient shrine chuckled. The Dragon King's face turned cold. He looked at the 4 people in front of him. All of them were covered in black robes, leaving only their heads exposed. His originally white hair, which was full of resilience and vitality, had turned into a strange grayish-white color, and on his face, streaks of terrifying blood-red demonic tattoos wrapped around their bodies. Coupled with their withered and shriveled faces, these elders of the ancient shrine of the divine temple were gloomy and terrifying. I want to ask you the same thing. The Dragon King's face was so gloomy that it looked like water was about to drip from it. Your ancient shrine's third elder died at the hands of the Demon Emperor. Back then, when your ancient shrine disappeared for no reason, We thought that you were trapped in some sort of remnant. But now, you're telling me that you've sided with the demon race." The old Dragon King roared in anger. The ancient shrine used to be the top holy land of martial arts of the human race. It was the strongest among the countless forces in the heaven continent. Its sudden disappearance had dealt a heavy blow to the morale of the heaven continent. Now it had reappeared as an accomplice of the demon race. The old Dragon King could imagine that if Tianyang hadn't appeared, the news of the ancient shrine joining the demon clan would have spread to the alliance of the heaven continent. It would have been a huge blow to the morale of the alliance. Even now, the ancient shrine's status had been completely replaced by Tianyang, who had returned and created countless legends. The Dragon King found it hard to accept. The ancient shrine was the top holy land of martial arts of the human race and the strongest force in the heaven continent. The first elder of the ancient shrine was the strongest man in the Tianshao Great World. He had sided with the demon race. The third elder, the first elder of the ancient shrine, was stunned when he heard the name. Then he sneered. Wasn't he possessed by the demon emperor and killed by Tianyang? What does it have to do with us surrendering to the demon race? Hearing this, the old Dragon King felt a chill run down his spine. Although the actions of the third elder of the ancient shrine were despised by the old Dragon King, he had still made great contributions to the ancient shrine. However, the words of the first elder of the ancient god temple made even the old Dragon King, an outsider, feel a chill in his heart. The third elder of the ancient god temple, who had made countless contributions to the ancient god temple, was killed by the demon emperor in the end. However, the great elder of the ancient shrine had said it so casually. He had no intention of taking revenge either. What's more, even if the ancient god temple and the demon tribe really have a grudge against each other, we still have to deal with them. There are no eternal allies in this world, only eternal benefits. Not to mention the death of a small elder. Even if everyone in the ancient shrine were to die, it wouldn't matter. A wise man submits to circumstances. Although there is still a small part of this world that is intact, it has already become the demon race's world. If you continue to resist stubbornly in the northern wilderness region, you will only become a part of the Blood Sea. If you follow me and side with the demon emperor, you will be reborn. The first elder of the ancient shrine laughed out loud. Hearing this, the blood prison demon king's expression changed slightly. First elder of the ancient shrine, you, shut up. Now, I am the demon race's human slayer king, not the first elder of the ancient shrine. Your status isn't even higher than mine. Shut up. The first elder of the ancient shrine said mercilessly. Hearing this, the blood prison demon king's expression darkened. He didn't ask the people from the temple of ancient god to come over to recruit the old Dragon King. The old Dragon King had defeated and toyed with him time and time again. He hated the old Dragon King to the core. If he allowed the old Dragon King to join the demon race, then the old Dragon King's position would definitely be higher than his. As his enemy, he had a higher position than him. This feeling of indignation. Scram. However, the old Dragon King only replied with one word to the first elder of the ancient shrine. Human Slayer King? I would like to see how you are going to destroy Heaven Continent. Since we are not on the same page, let's fight. The old Dragon King roared, and his dragon power exploded. Below him, the battle that had been interrupted by the change in the sky erupted again. Stubborn and stubborn. You have lived for 9,000 years, but the longer you live, the more backward you become. Hearing this, the first elder of the ancient shrine shook his head. Fine, I'll show you what true power is. Don't think that just because you can stop the demon emperor for a while, you can stop the demon emperor for the rest of your life. If not for the demon emperor focusing on that matter, your northern wilderness region would have long been overrun. The first elder of the ancient shrine sneered. In the next moment, the terrifying aura of a peak level 7 ascension realm was released. At the same time, there was a mixture of true yuan and demonic qi, revealing a terrifying energy of black and yellow. Peak level 7 ascension realm. Seeing this, the old Dragon King's eyes narrowed. Although the first elder of the ancient shrine was powerful, he was still quite a distance away from the peak level 7 ascension realm. He would need at least a few decades to break through. It had only been half a year since the demon race's calamity. The first elder of the ancient shrine had skipped a few decades. If you join the demon race, perhaps you will not be weaker than me. Blood-red inscriptions lit up on the face of the grand elder of the ancient divine hall. Even his voice became much more sinister and terrifying. Scram. Again, he only received one word in reply. After being rejected again and again, the first elder of the ancient shrine's face turned completely gloomy. It seems that you insist on refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Kill him. The first elder of the ancient shrine snorted coldly, and in the next moment, he disappeared from where he stood. A dazzling thunderbolt appeared in his hand, and it blasted toward the old dragon king fiercely. Scram! The old dragon king roared. Dragon power gathered in his hand, and he punched out. Dragon King's divine fist. The thunderbolt collided with the Dragon King's divine fist. Boom! There was a terrifying explosion, and the whole world was almost shattered. At this moment, the old Dragon King could not withstand the terrifying power of a peak level 7 ascension realm expert. He spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. At this moment, the second elder of the ancient shrine, the fourth elder of the ancient shrine, and the fifth elder of the ancient shrine had arrived behind the old Dragon King. Demonic chi surged in their hands, and the crimson runes on their faces shone brightly. Demonized ancient god body. The three of them roared at the same time. Demonic chi exploded, and three black-tainted ancient god phantoms appeared behind them. Immediately after, they punched out. Boom. Chapter 882. In just an instant, the old Dragon King fell into a predicament of being surrounded. Damn it! Below, Zhou Tong looked at the old Dragon King, who was instantly at a disadvantage, with a resentful expression. As one of the highest commanders of this expedition, he naturally knew the old Dragon King's strength very well. If it was only the great elder of the ancient shrine alone, the old Dragon King wouldn't be at a disadvantage. However, the old Dragon King had fought against the prison Blood Demon King and used up a lot of energy to heavily injure the Blood Demon army. Now, he was even attacked by the four great elders of the ancient shrine. Naturally, he was at a disadvantage in an instant. However, this time, the old Dragon King was the only Heaven Ascension realm expert in this expedition. Even though Zhou Tong's strength had advanced by leaps and bounds after cultivating the Heavenly Cycle Stellar Sword Scripture, he had already reached the 8th level of the Sea of Soul realm. However, in this great battle that was one level higher than him, he couldn't help in the slightest. If he rashly interfered, not only was he courting death, but he also wanted to harm the old Dragon King. Damn demon bastard. Unable to interfere in the battle above, Zhou Tong naturally vented all his anger on the Blood Demon army in front of him. The Blood Demon army had experienced many battles. Now, less than 30,000 of the 100,000 vanguard were left. Most of them were still fighting with injuries. On the other hand, there were at least 80,000 people in the Sky Continent Alliance that still maintained their fighting strength. A difference of more than 2 times. Even though the average strength of the Blood Demon army far exceeded that of the Sky Continent Alliance. However, at this level, in a situation where it was close to 3 against 1, no matter how strong the average strength was, it was useless. Now, Zhou Tong had joined the battle. That star-like sword was like a reaper reaping lives, killing the Blood Demon army one by one. The Blood Demon army was as weak as paper in front of the Sky Continent Alliance. However, Zhou Tong understood. No matter how overwhelming the victory below was, what truly decided the outcome of the battle was the battle of experts above. If the old Dragon King lost, even if he succeeded in wiping out the Blood Demon army, they would all be wiped out. Snow Gale State, Imperial Palace. Most of the Alliance's higher-ups had already left, preparing for the final battle. The Demon Emperor tore apart the agreement and started the war ahead of time. This was already beyond the expectations of most people. Therefore, There was no more time for the meeting. As for Sher Kaitian, he was guarding this place. His face was dark and sunken. In his hand was precisely the message that Zhou Tong had just transmitted. Blood Prison Demon King was defeated. So he crushed the space crystal and summoned the 4 elders of the ancient shrine. First elder, second elder, fourth elder, fifth elder. Except for the dead third elder of the ancient god temple, the 5 great elders of the ancient god temple are all here. Sher Kaitian growled as his greenish-gray skin flashed with light. Anger. Sher Kaitian had never been so angry before. The temple of the ancient god, the pillar of the human clan, and the former representative of the Tianshao Great World, should have been the main force against the demon clan. However, when the great calamity of the devil race began, he immediately disappeared and became the devil race's lackey. The old Dragon King can't hold on any longer. At this moment, another piece of news came. Sher Kaitian's pupils constricted as he roared. Those damned bastard from the temple of the ancient god. The aura of a peak level 6 ascension realm was released. Sher Kaitian's eyes were bloodshot, and he almost couldn't suppress his desire to fight. He wanted to rush out and fight the devil race to the death. However, this part of the northern wilderness region still needed them to guard it. Who knew how many devil race were hiding here? Who knew how many of these demons there were, and how many of them could cause a riot? Sher Kaitian could leave. He bet that nothing would happen to Sher Kaitian even if he left. However, Sher Kaitian didn't dare and couldn't gamble. If he lost, the Sky Continent would be destroyed. However, if he didn't leave, the old Dragon King wouldn't be able to hold on for long. The Blood Prison Demon King and the 4 great elders of the ancient shrine were all extremely terrifying existences. At this moment, Sher Kaitian's expression suddenly changed as he looked to the side. A space crack suddenly opened. Under the silver light, an unbelievably young figure walked out calmly. "How is the battle going now?" The young voice sounded. Hearing this, the originally furious Sher Kaitian immediately calmed down. His eyes were full of hope as he looked at that person. The old Dragon King has already rushed to the front line and is about to win. However, he is besieged by the ancient god temple elites summoned by Blood Prison Demon King. He won't be able to hold on for long. The 4 great elders of the ancient god temple have already surrendered to the devil race. Sher Kaitian roared angrily. At this moment, Sher Kaitian suddenly felt a chilling, killing intent flash through his heart. Then, a voice so cold that it seemed to come from the depths of hell was heard. "Position, right? Okay." That person nodded. The next moment, a bright golden light flashed, and that person disappeared from where he was. Sher Kaitian released his soul power and sensed thousands of miles away, but he couldn't find him. The formation succeeded? It's faster than planned. Sher Kaitian was stunned. Then he raised his head and laughed loudly. "Ha ha! Devil bastards, the Sword Emperor is here. Wait for your death." "Oh no, isn't this Demon King fighting with the old Dragon King? Why is he in our army?" At the border of the northern wilderness region and the Blood Sea, looking at Blood Prison Demon King in the center of the battlefield, Zhou Tong's heart trembled. The terrifying aura of a LV 7 Heaven Ascension Demon King radiated from his body. At the same time, waves of powerful blood demon chi were released, nourishing the blood demons that had been severely injured by the Heaven Continent's army. Soon, the remaining 10,000 blood demons had all recovered to their peak state. On the other hand, the Heaven Continent's army only had 30,000 soldiers left, maintaining their peak state. As for their physical strength, it had been greatly depleted. To deal with the old Dragon King, I can just use Mortal Extermination King's group. However, I want to deal with a bunch of ants like you. However, I want to see my army being annihilated by a bunch of ants. Blood Prison Demon King stood on the battlefield. His huge body was like a giant statue. Everyone present felt that it was difficult to breathe. Blood Prison Demon King in the 7th Heaven Continent. He was too strong. They were only at the Illuminating Chi realm and Origin Transformation realm. The strongest, Zhou Tong, was only at the 8th Sea of Soul realm. There was a huge gap between them and the seventh sea of Soul Realm. In the sky, the old Dragon King had also noticed Blood Prison Demon King's situation, but he was helpless. At this moment, it was already difficult for him to survive the siege of the four elders of the ancient God Hall. How could he protect the others? Bastard! Zhou Tong roared in his heart. At this moment, Blood Prison Demon King's eyes flashed with mockery as he looked at Zhou Tong. Looks like you're the strongest. Then, the massacre will begin with you. Blood Prison Demon King laughed maniacally as he stretched out his hand and attacked Zhou Tong. Zhou Tong's expression changed drastically. Before the blood demon's hand reached him, a terrifying aura pressed down on him, causing him to almost spit out blood. At this moment, a calm voice was heard. If I were you, I wouldn't move. Hearing this, Blood Prison Demon King was stunned for a moment before he flew into a rage. Who? How dare you act all mysterious in front of me? In the next moment, a figure appeared. Compared to Blood Prison Demon King's huge body, this figure was extremely small. He appeared in front of Blood Prison Demon King. His body was still rippling from the teleportation, and his expression was filled with a murderous aura. Seeing this, the Sky Continent's Alliance army was stunned. Then, the entire army was in an uproar. Even the supreme commander of the Alliance army, Zhou Tong, saw this figure and shouted excitedly. Tianyang, the Demon Venerable is here. Long live the Demon Venerable. That bullish asterisk T Demon King is dead meat. The Demon Venerable is someone who killed hundreds of Demon Kings. In the Sky Continent's Alliance army, there was a sudden burst of excited roars. To them, Tianyang was a legend, the only legend in the world. At this moment, Blood Prison Demon King's expression finally changed. He became extremely pale, without a trace of blood. Tianyang, Tianyang. In the next moment, Blood Prison Demon King turned around and charged towards the sea of blood. In the battle 2 days ago, Tianyang had completed his tribulation and killed hundreds of Demon Kings in a fit of rage. Blood Prison Demon King did not want to be devoured by the Demon Chi like those Demon Kings. At this moment, Tianyang said indifferently, I said that if I were you, I wouldn't move. What? Blood Prison Demon King was stunned. In the next moment, in front of him, there was a blinding golden light. Before Blood Prison Demon King could react, the golden light had already enveloped his entire body. If you move, you will become a test subject for the formation. Tianyang shook his head and chuckled. As for the golden light, it suddenly released an incomparably terrifying power. Boom! A terrifying explosion was heard. Blood Prison Demon King did not even have time to cry out. His body exploded, his soul scattered, and he turned into a bloody mist. Even the Demon Chi was easily devoured by Tianyang. In the sky, the people from the ancient shrine looked down at Tianyang in disbelief. This was the Demon Venerable Tianyang they knew. He activated the formation's power with just a wave of his hand. Controlling the formation to kill demons was like slaughtering chickens and dogs. Chapter 883. Controlling the formation to kill demons was as easy as slaughtering chickens. Blood Prison Demon King, who had been at the 7th tier of the Heaven Ascension realm, had only fallen into a disadvantageous position after fighting with the old Dragon King for a long time. Blood Prison Demon King, who had been seized by the old Dragon King, had died so easily at Tianyang's hands. To be precise, it was in the formation that had changed at some point in time. Its power is not bad. Tianyang smiled. He was not surprised. He had spent more than a day to set up this formation. Just like Alchemy Dao, the connection between Array Dao and Soul Strength was also extremely huge. Tianyang's soul power had long surpassed that of his previous life by leaps and bounds. Similarly, his mastery of formations had also far surpassed that of his previous life. Under Tianyang's control, it would be strange if the formation could not kill the Blood Prison Demon King, who was in Heaven Ascension Stage LV7, instantly. How is that possible? That's a Demon King. At this moment, the elders of the ancient God Temple who were besieging the old Dragon King widened their eyes and exclaimed in disbelief. That was a demon king. Even now, they were only at the level of a demon king. But in front of Tianyang, the demon king could be killed with just a wave of his hand. Oomph. He's just using the power of the formation. At that moment, the great elder of the ancient shrine snorted and looked at Tianyang with contempt. The blood prison demon king knew that Tianyang had shocked the world by killing hundreds of demon kings. However, the ancient shrine grand elder did not know that. Killing demon kings was a weapon the demons used to deal with the Sky Continent Alliance. They did not need so many weapons. That was why the ancient shrine grand elder mocked him so ignorantly. This formation covers the entire northern wilderness region. It's not easy to activate it. No matter how talented Tianyang is, it's impossible for him to activate it so many times in such a short time. As for his original cultivation, it's not worth mentioning. The chief elder of the ancient god hall sneered. Hearing that, the other three elders also nodded, although they had joined the demons. However, he hadn't lost his basic senses yet. Just by sensing it, he could tell that Tianyang was not even 25 years old, and because of Tianyang's soul strength, he could not detect his cultivation. Naturally, a trace of contempt arose in his heart. Even the first elder of the ancient divine temple, who had fought with Tianyang before, was full of contempt. Until now, he still didn't think that Tianyang had destroyed his clone with his own strength. A Heaven Ascension Stage Tier 6 Pinnacle Cultivator can be destroyed with a flip of my hand. Let's cut the crap and kill this old Dragon King before dealing with the Tianyang. The chief elder of the ancient god hall shouted. The other elders nodded heavily. To them, the one who posed the greatest threat was still the old Dragon King, who had accumulated power for 9,000 years, was in the 7th tier of the Reaching Heaven state, and had mastered countless magical powers of the Dragon Clan. Now, the Grand Elder of the Ancient Shrine, at the peak of LV7 of the Reaching Heaven state. The second Elder of the Ancient God Hall was in the 7th tier of the Reaching Heaven state. The 4th and 5th Elders of the Ancient God Hall were also in the 6th tier of the Reaching Heaven state. Tianyang was only at the same level as the 4th and 5th Elders of the Ancient God Hall. Of course, they didn't take him seriously. The old Dragon King put up a defensive shield and looked at the 4 Elders of the Ancient God Hall in front of him, not knowing what to say. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This group of people was really being used by the demons. They were completely being used by the demons. Tianyang had killed hundreds of demon kings in a row and was very famous among the demons. He had even killed the demon emperor. How could these guys from the ancient god hall be so disdainful of him? It was one thing to have no news and the same thing to have a low IQ. Look down on the demon venerable. The 4 elders of the ancient god hall didn't deliberately hide their conversation. Not only did the old Dragon King hear it, but also the Sky Continent's allied forces below. Everyone was stunned. The ancient god hall must be blind. Or were they out of their minds? How could they not know about the demon venerable's great reputation? TSK, so ignorant. I'm embarrassed to laugh. Zhou Tong commanded the Sky Continent's allied forces to hunt down the remaining remnants of the Blood Demon Army as he shook his head. The generals next to him also nodded. Tianyang. In the current Sky Continent's allied forces, he was a hero, a legend, and a god. This group of mortals dared to look down on their god. They were courting death. Tianyang saw the 4's actions and was slightly stunned. He didn't expect that this group of old farts could still take it for granted. He didn't know whether it was because they had been high and mighty for too long or because the demonic chi had burned their brains. However, Tianyang wouldn't give them any chance to make up for their mistakes. The majestic heavenly might is in my hands. Extreme divine lightning. Tianyang smiled faintly and stepped into the void. His eyes seemed to see the boundless sky as bolts of lightning appeared in his hands. The surrounding mountains and rivers trembled slightly. This was a terrifying pressure that covered the entire northern wilderness region. What? The ancient shrine's 4th elder was the first to feel the terrifying fluctuation. His expression changed as he hurriedly turned to look. He saw, At this moment, Tianyang had already condensed the extreme divine lightning to the limit. It formed a small thunderstorm in his hands. Didn't the Grand Elder say that this guy couldn't use the array's power continuously? How could this guy form such a terrifying attack? The ancient shrine's fourth elder's expression changed drastically as he looked at Tianyang in disbelief. At this moment, the thunderstorm in Tianyang's hands had already flown out. Oh no! At that moment, it wasn't just the fourth elder of the ancient god hall. Even the first elder of the ancient god hall felt the terrifying pressure behind him. It was as if the power of heaven and earth was going to destroy the great path. In front of this extreme divine lightning, their cultivation levels were as small as ants, even though they were Ascension Realm LV6 or LV7. How could this Tianyang have such strong power? The ancient shrine's grand elder's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly looked at Tianyang, and his attack slowed down for a moment. At this moment, the old Dragon King's pupils dilated, and he instantly exploded. The barrier broke, and the dragon power gushed out. He changed from defense to offense. At this moment, Tianyang's extreme divine lightning had already arrived. The group of people from the ancient shrine who had been besieging the old Dragon King was now in a predicament. They were in a predicament of being attacked from the front and back. Boom! The group of people from the ancient shrine only had time to condense some insignificant defense before Tianyang's thunderstorm and the old Dragon King's dragon fist violently bombarded them. In an instant, heaven and earth trembled, and the mountains and rivers trembled. The ground that had sunk nearly 10 meters under their feet sank again. The collision occurred in midair. Even the heaven and earth below could not bear it. The ground sank for a full 100 meters before it stopped. At this moment, Tianyang moved. He charged toward the four pitch-black, demonized ancient gods. The great void sword embryo appeared in his hand. Sky sword technique. First move, sky soaring. Tianyang swung his sword and then turned around to attack. Second move, sky breaking. The true flames of destruction burned. Third move, star burial. The sword light was as bright as a galaxy. Fourth move, firmament. In an instant, he swung his sword 4 times. An obvious crack appeared on the waists of the 4 demonized ancient gods. Then boom, the bodies of the 4 ancient gods were all destroyed. They were dislocated and turned into dust. Chapter 884. 4 swords in an instant. Killing an ancient god with 4 swords. The heavenly sun's speed had reached a new level. In just a short moment, the 4 demonized ancient gods that had besieged the old Dragon King were instantly killed. Even the demonic chi within it was devoured by the heavenly sun into the sky firmament sword. The heaven cloud sword had evolved to an upper grade heaven rank martial soul. God knew how much demon chi or martial soul power it would need to evolve to a higher grade. Tianyang wasn't sure either. Therefore, he devoured every demonic aura he saw, if not for his lack of ability. Tianyang even wanted to devour the blood sea that covered half of the heaven continent. At this moment, with a loud bang, beams of terrifying light lit up in the area that was engulfed by the extreme divine lightning. Boom! Even the extreme divine lightning was unable to sustain itself. It was dispersed by the sudden burst of light. The old Dragon King's fist was also shattered. Smoke and dust filled the air. When it dissipated, the crowd could see the 4 grand elders of the ancient shrine in the sky. They were all covered in blood and looked haggard. Their grayish-white skin was char-black. They looked battered and exhausted. Their auras had also dropped to the lowest point. Bastard, the great elder of the ancient shrine, raised his head and roared at Tianyang, his face full of resentment. However, Tianyang's face turned cold when he heard that. He swung his sword casually. A terrifying beam of sword light flew out instantly. The grand elder of the ancient shrine paled. He couldn't even move an inch before he was struck by the terrifying sword. His right arm was cut off. Blood spurted out. Before the grand elder of the ancient shrine could react, his entire right arm had disappeared. Seeing this, the Dragon King, who had never seen Tianyang fight, was stunned. That was the grand elder of the ancient shrine. After receiving the demon chi empowerment, he was half human and half demon. He had reached LV7 of the Heaven Ascension realm, and could even reach LV8 of the Heaven Ascension realm. But Tianyang had cut off his right arm so easily. The old Dragon King had only heard of Tianyang killing hundreds of demon kings, but he had never seen it with his own eyes. Naturally, they did not know that Tianyang's strength had already reached such a tyrannical level. At that time, if the Demon Emperor had not seen that the situation was not good and immediately transferred his consciousness back to his main body, he would have died. Otherwise, Tianyang might even be able to follow the clues and severely injure the Demon Emperor's devil soul. Even though he had activated Wu Zun's realm of soul power to achieve such a magnificent feat, his strength was not something that trash like the first elder of the ancient shrine could contend against. "Bastard! How dare you cut off my arm?" the great elder of the ancient god hall screamed. He looked at Tianyang and roared with hatred. Since he had become the great elder of the ancient god temple, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? The last time he was humiliated, it was still a clone that was killed. However, that clone was also killed by Tianyang. "Not only did I dare to cut off one of your arms, but I also dared to cut off both of your arms." Tianyang's expression was extremely indifferent. Cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. If the ancient god temple had still made some moves against the demon clan, Tianyang might not have acted so decisively. At least he would have left them a chance to resist. However, when the calamity began, the ancient god temple had disappeared. They were probably discussing whether to join. Now, they had appeared in the Heaven Continent Alliance in their half-human, half-demon state, and were even attacking the people of the Heaven Continent. Tianyang naturally would not hold back. He pointed his finger. The great elder of the ancient god temple's left shoulder suddenly exploded. His left arm also seemed to have turned into a bomb, exploding wildly. Boom, 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 boom. It seemed that every cell in the left arm began to explode wildly. Before it could even leave the great elder of the ancient god temple's body, all the energy had turned into an explosion. The great elder of the ancient god temple suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The hatred in his eyes instantly turned into madness. "How dare you cut off both of my arms? I'll kill you." In the next moment, the great elder of the ancient god temple disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Tianyang. His true core fluctuated unsteadily. Streaks of irregular waves were released around the great elder of the ancient god temple. Seeing this, the old Dragon King's expression changed drastically. He was going to self-destruct. Self-destruct. Tianyang smiled faintly and looked at the great elder of the ancient god temple. "You want to self-destruct in front of me? You've overestimated yourself." "What?" Hearing this, the old Dragon King was stunned. Countless worried soldiers below were also stunned. Self-destruct? Could he stop it? Ha ha ha. Tianyang, do you think you're facing the self-destruction of a spiritual sea realm cultivator? No matter how weak I am, I'm still an elite at the peak of LV7 Heaven Ascension realm. If you want to stop me from self-destructing, you have to be at least at the level of the Demon Emperor. The great elder of the ancient god temple roared like a madman. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled faintly. He looked at the great elder of the ancient god temple with amusement. "Do you think I'm weaker than the Demon Emperor?" In the next moment, Tianyang pointed a finger. Wu Zun's soul power gushed out violently. A terrifying pressure that seemed to be able to crush everything in the world pressed down on the great elder of the ancient god temple. In just an instant, the great elder of the ancient god temple felt like he was being crushed by 10,000 giant dragons. All the bones in his body were almost broken. At the same time, Tianyang waved his hand casually. 4 stars appeared. Extremely tough star chains extended and penetrated the great elder of the ancient god temple's skin, sealing his dantian. How is this possible? The great elder of the ancient god temple roared in disbelief. His expression changed drastically. His irregularly fluctuating aura gradually calmed down. His raging vital core also calmed down because no one was controlling it. The great elder of the ancient god temple had his dantian sealed and become a cripple. How could you seal my dantian? How is this possible? Even the demon emperor might not be able to do this. The great elder of the ancient god temple screamed in disbelief. He used to be the most powerful person in the sky continent, but now he was screaming like a shrew. Tianyang, on the other hand, was indifferent. A murderous intent flashed across his eyes. He pointed a finger. The great elder of the ancient god temple's left leg suddenly exploded. Ah! The great elder of the ancient god temple screamed in pain. Tianyang, on the other hand, was indifferent. This finger is because the ancient god temple plundered resources without doing anything. Then Tianyang pointed a finger again. The great elder of the ancient god temple's right leg exploded into a cloud of blood mist. This finger is because you led the strongest people of the ancient god temple to the demon clan. Ah! The great elder of the ancient god temple was still screaming in pain, but his aura was much weaker. Finally, Tianyang pointed a finger. The great elder of the ancient god temple's heart exploded. This finger is because you led the ancient god temple to attack the sky continent. 3 fingers, and the great elder of the ancient god temple was dead. The old dragon king's heart trembled when he saw this. Was this the terrifying strength of someone who killed 100 kings with a sword? Even the great elder of the ancient god temple was like an ant in front of Tianyang. He couldn't resist at all. At this moment, Tianyang turned his head again and looked at the remaining 3 trembling great elders of the ancient god temple. Great elders of the 6th or 7th level of the Heaven Ascension realm were like mice in front of Tianyang. However, Tianyang wouldn't spare them just because they were weak. We are willing to be your slaves. We only hope that you don't kill us, the 2nd elder of the ancient god temple said in a trembling voice. Tianyang waved his hand casually. The remaining 3 great elders seemed to have been erased from existence. Chapter 885. With a wave of his hand, the 3 of them, who were powerful enough to dominate the Tianshao Great World, were obliterated as if they had been erased from existence, including the great elder of the ancient shrine, whose arms and legs had been severed by Tianyang. The 4 of them, who would have been at the peak of Heaven Continent in the past, were all killed by Tianyang in just a few minutes. Even the old Dragon King was dumbfounded as he looked at Tianyang in disbelief. He knew that Tianyang was very strong. Whether it was seizing opportunities, refining pills, or setting up arrays, they were all things that ordinary people could not do. However, he did not expect Tianyang to be so strong. The 4 great elders of the ancient shrine, who were enough to give the entire Heaven Continent Alliance a headache, did not last more than a few minutes in front of Tianyang. They were killed in an instant. The remnants of the Blood Demon army despaired when they saw this scene. It was too terrifying. Tianyang's strength was like the demon emperor of the demon race. He was so strong that they despaired. Some of the blood demons even wondered if the demon emperor could kill these demon king-level existences without alerting anyone, even if the demon emperor personally intervened. However, Zhotong would not give these demon race bastards time to think. His figure flashed. Zhotong charged into the crowd of blood demons. Sword Emperor, Godly Marshal. Invincible throughout the ages, Zhotong slashed out with his sword and killed a heavily injured blood demon general, who was also at the 7th stage of the Sea of Soul Realm. He raised the blood demon general's head with his sword and roared. Hearing this, the entire Heaven Continent Alliance, regardless of whether they could fight or not, raised their weapons and roared. Sword Emperor, Godly Marshal. Invincible throughout the ages, the roars shook the heavens as if they were going to shatter the mountains and rivers. The remaining Sea of Soul Realm cultivators in the Blood Demon army trembled when they saw this scene. Although there were no more than 50,000 blood demons in the Heaven Continent Alliance who still had the strength to fight. Less than 10,000 of them were at their peak. Most of them were recovering from their injuries at the rear, but they did not have the strength to fight. However, the Blood Demon Oddity Army looked at the heavily injured Blood Demon Army as if they were looking at a lion. Army Force. The Blood Demon General had just spat out 2 words in a hoarse voice when Zhou Tong, who had rushed over, killed him with a single slash. Until now, the Blood Demon King of the Blood Demon Army's Blood Demon Army was annihilated. Blood Demon King dead. The 4 great elders of the ancient shrine dead. The blood demons to the end, to the blood demon armies, to we bloods. The armies is of the demon blood demon army, to blood demon armies, to heaven continent. Their hands is theirs, hands is, and theirs says twos is this of theirs blood, sword, God, godly God martial. Shouts erupted from the heavenly clouds, continents, allied forces. Seeing this, the old Dragon King, who had been severely injured and his draconic powers almost depleted, could not help but roar into the sky. Dragon roars reverberated throughout the world. At this moment, Tianyang slowly descended and arrived in the middle of Heaven Continent's allied forces. Seeing this, countless soldiers stopped shouting and looked at Tianyang with reverence. They knew that if Tianyang had not arrived in time, the 4 great elders of the ancient shrine would have killed the old Dragon King sooner or later. This group of soldiers would also be unable to resist and would be slaughtered by the Blood Prison Demon King. It was Tianyang. He had arrived just in time to kill the Demon King and the great elder of the ancient shrine, wiping out the ancient shrine with one hand. As for Tianyang, he was in a daze as he faced the 100,000 gazes of reverence. It was as if he had returned to 10,000 years ago. At that time, when he returned from killing the Demon King, he had also received such gazes. However, in an instant, Tianyang came back to his senses. Looking at the 100,000 wounded soldiers in front of him, he smiled and waved his hand. Boundless vitality gushed out and turned into a gentle stream that flowed through each and every soldier. All of you have worked hard. The news spread like a storm. Even before Tianyang returned to the Northern Wilderness region, the entire Northern Wilderness region had received the news. The entire world was shocked. Even the higher-ups of Heaven Continent's allied forces were in disbelief. When they sent out the 200,000 soldiers, they did not expect to win, especially when they knew that the 100,000 demons vanguard was made up of elite blood demons who were at the peak of the primordial transformation realm. At that time, countless higher-ups had already given up on the 200,000 soldiers and started to gather all the troops in the Northern Wilderness region. They only hoped that the 200,000 soldiers could stall for a while. But now, they were telling him, they won. How is this possible? Guayin, who was hiding in his palace, looked at the news in disbelief. No one knew better than him what the 200,000 soldiers were made up of. In fact, although the Heaven Continent's allied forces were weak, they could still gather 200,000 primordial transformation realm soldiers in a short time. They did not need the Bright Chi realm soldiers to participate in the battle. The reason why they did this, it was all to take revenge on Tianyang. Didn't you kill hundreds of demon kings, refine divine pills, and set up sky formations? But under the myths, 200,000 soldiers had been completely wiped out. What was this? Guayin, whose entire clan was wiped out, and even the strongest ghostly was killed by Tianyang, had long been twisted. At worst, he would join the demons. With his cultivation of Heaven Ascension Stage LV4, he was not considered a demon king, but he was at the top of the demon generals. But now, oh no, I have to run. At this moment, Guayin's body trembled, and he suddenly woke up. His body flashed, and he appeared outside the palace. Now, the army had won. Those people would definitely find out what he had done to the army. However, when he appeared in the palace garden, he was terrified to find that this space had already been sealed. I thought that with your cultivation of Heaven Ascension Stage LV4, even if you resented Tianyang for not participating in the battle, you could at least guard the Northern Wilderness region. But I didn't expect that you would even do something to the army. Sure, Kai Qian's face was cold as he walked out of the space and looked at Guayin with an emotionless gaze. Then Li Tianshun, the old Dragon King, the Nine-Tailed Demon King, and the rest of the allied forces had all arrived. All of them were at least Heaven Ascension Stage LV5. I didn't expect. Li Tianxin's face was filled with mixed feelings. Although he was narrow-minded, he had contributed to Heaven Continent. Although he had been stripped of his position as the alliance leader, he had never thought of using the army. Now he was relieved. A legend like Tianyang was not someone he could touch. Tianyang did not do anything to him, because Tianyang did not want to do anything to him. After thinking this through, Li Tianxin's state of mind improved, and there were signs of a breakthrough. Now that he saw Gue Yin go astray, he was heartbroken. Alliance leader, Gue Yin's voice trembled as he looked at the people walking out. In the next moment, his body suddenly disappeared, and he charged toward the nine-tailed demon king, who was the weakest among them. I want Tianyang dead. Gue Yin roared and threw a palm strike at the nine-tailed demon king. However, at this moment, a calm voice rang out. You'd rather die than change. All right, I'll fulfill your wish. In the next moment, a sword gleam suddenly appeared in front of Gue Yin. Gue Yin's pupils also shrunk to the extreme. You! Gue Yin roared in disbelief. In the next moment, he was hit by the sword gleam. Chapter 886. Killing Gue Yin was nothing to Tianyang at this moment. He even killed the great elder of the ancient shrine. On the way back, he killed the guy behind the scenes. Naturally, he was calm. However, seeing this scene, some of the higher-ups of the Alliance who hadn't seen Tianyang's combat strength with their own eyes trembled. Gue Yin was an expert of LV4 of the Reaching Heaven realm. In terms of cultivation and combat strength, he was no worse than an ordinary LV4 of the Reaching Heaven realm. Even in the Alliance, he was at the top of the pyramid. However, in front of Tianyang, he still didn't have the strength to fight back and was easily killed. Suddenly, countless higher-ups of the Alliance had a trace of awe for Tianyang. They had already tried their best to resist the demons, but now they were almost desperate. Well, clean up the mess yourself. I haven't killed Gue Yin's soul yet. You can refine him into a soul weapon, a puppet, or kill him directly. It's up to you. Tianyang said lightly and waved his hand. Gue Yin, who wanted to escape, was forced to appear by an extremely terrifying force and exposed in the air. Hearing this, Gue Yin's heart trembled again. Refine him into a soul weapon? A puppet? Kill him directly? Wasn't Tianyang a kind and righteous person? Why was it so easy to give up a soul weapon and a puppet? If Tianyang heard Gue Yin's inner thoughts, he would probably laugh his head off. He was kind, righteous. This was the funniest joke Tianyang had ever heard in his life. The reason why he spared Gue Yin's life was because the alliance of the Sky Continent was weak and in urgent need of combat strength. If not, Gue Yin would have been burned to ashes by Tianyang's true flames of destruction if he dared to make trouble in the dark. 200,000 troops. Among them, 50,000 of the Bright Chi realm were included because of Gue Yin. More than 46,000 died. The remaining 3,000 were almost permanently disabled because of the war. The road of martial arts was cut off. Even if there were 150,000 transformation realm warriors, about 50,000 died. Fortunately, Tianyang saved some at the end. Otherwise, the number of people who were eroded by the power of the blood demon would be even more. Even so, there were less than 80,000 of them who would be able to fight in the future. Almost all the generals and commanders were injured, especially Zhou Tong. In order to kill the blood demon general, Zhou Tong had burned his true essence countless times. In the end, Tianyang had to spend several minutes refining pills to save him. Even though this was a great victory, annihilating the demon race's vanguard, and even killing 5 demon kings, the demon race's vanguard was still alive. But to the alliance of sky clouds, this was also a fragmented victory. As for Gue Yin, he was the instigator of this incomplete victory. If not for Tianyang forcefully suppressing his anger, Gue Yin's soul would have already dissipated. With a single step, Tianyang disappeared from where he stood. As for the remaining Old Dragon King, Shirkaitian, and the others, they looked at Gue Yin's remnant soul with furious expressions. At this moment, no one had any sympathy for Gue Yin. His actions were even more infuriating than some of the devils. This was the world of martial arts, and the apocalyptic world at that. The Holy Mother had long since perished in the Great Tribulation. To be able to survive, all of them were existences with incomparably shocking willpower and strength. In terms of soul tools, not many people know how to refine them. As for puppets, without a suitable body, they can't even unleash a tenth of their original strength. Shirkaition said indifferently. Hearing this, everyone nodded. Killing him was definitely out of the question. For this kind of person, even if he died, he had to unleash his final value. Obliterate his consciousness and use it as energy. In the end, the old Dragon King made the final decision. Just like that, the last survivor of the Ghost Race, a Heaven Ascension Stage Level 4 elite, Guayin, amidst boundless fear and resentment, his consciousness was completely obliterated. He disappeared from this world. 100,000 troops, all annihilated. The Blood Prison Demon King is dead, and the 4 great elders of the ancient shrine are also dead. Above the Blood Sea, in the demon race's base camp, the Demon Emperor's pupils constricted as he looked in disbelief at the Demon General who brought the news. The Demon General's cultivation was weak, but his eyesight was good. Even if he was close to the battlefield, he would not be discovered because he was hiding in the Blood Sea. Therefore, the Demon Emperor could get the news. Otherwise, perhaps the entire northern wilderness region was celebrating, but the demons still did not know about it. Yes, the Demon General said weakly. Upon hearing this, the Demon Emperor's expression didn't change, but the muscles in his hand instantly tightened. One could even see the throbbing veins. Pooh! A muffled sound was heard. On the armrest of the Demon Emperor's throne, that exquisite and gorgeous gem ornament was directly turned into powder. Although the Demon Emperor was expressionless, he was infuriated. He had sent out Blood Prison Demon King and mobilized 100,000 blood demons with the intention of winning the war and opening a gap in the Sky Clouds Continents Alliance. In the end, Blood Prison Demon King was dead. Even the dog that he had carefully raised, the people from the temple of the ancient god, was dead. The 100,000 blood demon army was completely wiped out. One had to know that the Blood Sea could produce demonic soldiers and demonic generals endlessly. However, it would take time. Production required time, and growth also required time. Even for demons, these two things required very little time. However, it had only been half a year since the catastrophe of the demon race. After half a year, the demon race could accumulate less than 10 million troops. Now, they had lost 100,000, and the number of Demon King level figures that died in the hands of Tianyang was also more than 110. Immediately prepare the army. This time, no more probing. The Demon Emperor slowly opened his mouth. His tone was extremely cold, as if he had walked out of the deep sea. Seeing this, the countless Demon Kings and Demon Generals below were slightly stunned. Although the Demon Emperor had managed to control his emotions very well, he was still able to control his emotions. However, even by the Demon Emperor's side, one could still feel the terrifying, cold, killing intent. The Demon Emperor was angry. Reporting to the Alliance leader, the 5 million troops of Sky Cloud's continent have been assembled. The human race, 1 million Origin Transformation Realm, 3 million Clear Chi Realm. The demon race, 500,000 Origin Transformation Realm, 500,000 Clear Chi Realm. The dragon race, 50,000 Dao Fire Realm, 150,000 Origin Transformation Realm, and so on, have all gathered. Li Tianxin's respectful voice sounded. Behind him, a total of 5 million soldiers were all gathered here. Just by standing there, one could feel an aura that soared to the heavens. And in this aura, a team of less than 50,000 people was especially obvious. The rest were the aura. These soldiers who had experienced a life and death battle with the Blood Demon Army were military power, like lions, fearless of death, a terrifying military power that charged forward bravely. Even if it was less than 50,000, it was not the strongest. But this 5 million army seemed to be led by these 50,000 soldiers. Good. Hearing this, the nine-tailed Demon Emperor also nodded and looked behind her. The old Dragon King and Shirkaition who had been restored to their peak by the three-wheel of life and death transformation pills, nodded. At this moment, the great void sword embryo appeared in Tianyang's hand. The sword pointed to the sky, and the terrifying aura of the peak of Heaven Ascension, Realm Level 6 bloomed. Today, the 5 million troops of sky clouds. Chapter 887. Charge to the Blood Sea. These 4 simple words, coupled with Tianyang's current tone and strength, seemed so impassioned and magnificent. Hearing these 4 words, the 5 million Heaven Continent Alliance soldiers below felt their blood boil. How long had it been? Their Heaven Continent Alliance could only passively take a beating. Every time, the demon race had already killed their way to their doorstep before they fought. In the early stage of the catastrophe, even if they used all their strength, they couldn't win a single battle and were forced to retreat. It was almost every time the demon race attacked, Heaven Continent would lose. Therefore, more than half of Heaven Continent's territory fell into the Blood Sea. But now, Tianyang told them that they would no longer passively take a beating. Instead, they would take the initiative to attack. If it were the arrogant words of a young man, this group of Heaven Continent Alliance soldiers who were over 100 years old naturally wouldn't take it seriously. However, the person who spoke was the strongest person in Heaven Continent, the Sword Emperor who had killed hundreds of demon kings and cleaned up the ancient shrine. At this moment, Heaven Continent also had the confidence to counterattack. Kill! 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 The only response to Tianyang was a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the heavens and earth. Good. Seeing this, Tianyang smiled in satisfaction and waved his right hand. The power of space surged rapidly, and 3 stars appeared. A huge spatial gate condensed, and as Tianyang's soul power surged, it became bigger and bigger. In just a few blinks of an eye, the spatial gate that was originally only big enough for a few people to pass through had now expanded to the size of a city gate, and it was still growing bigger and bigger as Tianyang's power circulated. Tianyang didn't just set up the array to strengthen the power of the array. He also set up a special ability for this array. As long as the person authenticated by the array made a move, they could be teleported from any place in the array to another place. Of course, the person who made the move also had the ability to teleport. However, at this moment, Tianyang had such an ability. He directly teleported the 5 million troops from the center of the northern wilderness region of the Heaven Continent Alliance to the battlefield a few hours ago. A full 10 minutes passed. Tianyang finally expanded the spatial gate to its limit. The original space gate was only the size of a hole. At that moment, the spatial gate was even larger than the 9 luminaries dragon flame tree. Even if 10,000 people were to walk through it shoulder to shoulder, it would not be crowded at all. 50,000 each time. There will be a total of 20 times. The first batch will consist of 1 million soldiers. The 9-tailed monstrous beast spoke. Now that the final battle had yet to begin, it would be the stupidest thing to do. However, even a 1 million-strong army was enough to give the demons a headache. The 1 million-strong army had at least one upper-grade treasure to protect themselves, and there were countless pills in their interspatial bags. Now, most of the forces in Heaven Continent had been destroyed by the Demon Clan. The remaining forces had retreated to the northern wilderness region. Naturally, they were not willing to serve the Demon Clan. On the premise that they could maintain their own forces, the weapon refining forces and alchemy forces took out almost all of their precious weapons and elixirs. After all, if Skycloud's continent won, they would be able to get the best rewards. If they lost, with the brutal nature of the demon race, they naturally wouldn't let them live. At that time, what was the difference between becoming the devil race's alchemy puppet and dying? Of course, the Heaven Continent Alliance didn't treat them unfairly. Yes, following the 9-tailed monstrous beast order, the 50,000 people who had experienced the battle of the Blood Demon Vanguard walked toward the interspatial door. An aura similar to that of a lion's gathered on their bodies. If they were used slightly, this seemingly wounded army would become a real army of tigers and wolves. Only through blood and fire could it be possible to turn an army into a real sharp blade? In the Blood Sea, just as the Alliance's higher-ups expected, there were countless demon clan spies in the northern wilderness region. Even a 3-year-old child knew about the gathering of 5 million soldiers. Naturally, it couldn't be hidden from the eyes of those spies. However, the Alliance's higher-ups didn't think of hiding it. Although a sneak attack was effective, it would be stupid to hide it when they knew it couldn't be done. We haven't done anything yet, and Skycloud's continent dares to counterattack. In the Demon Clan's base camp, a demon king who was red all over and had a violent look on his face roared. There seemed to be lava flowing under his feet. Emperor, I, Flame Demon King Inke, have volunteered. I only wish to exterminate the human race. I, Shadow Demon King Inzi, have volunteered. I only wish to exterminate the human race. Saber Demon King, Blood Demon King, Flame Demon, Shadow Demon, Saber Demon, and Blood Demon were the main races of the Demon Clan. The Demon Kings of Heavenly Cloud's continent were led by these 4 races. As for the noblest Heavenly Demon Clan, there was only one Demon King. There was only one Devil King, the strongest Heaven Devil King, In Tian Shao. There was also the Supreme Demon Emperor of the Demon Clan in Sky Cloud's continent. Enough. Just as the Demon Kings were talking, endless viciousness flashed in their eyes, as if the human race was as easy to kill as pigs and dogs. The Demon Emperor suddenly spoke. His indifferent eyes flashed with a blood-red light. Do you really think that the human race is so easy to kill? If they were so easy to kill, the Blood Demon army would have already destroyed the northern wilderness region. You should know that he and the 4 ancient shrine elders are no weaker than any of you in terms of strength, but they still died. The Demon Emperor roared. Even he had a face full of wariness. Tianyang's growth was too fast. The first time they met was only a few years ago. At that time, Tianyang had to rely on various means to be able to compete with him and win the battle. The second time they met was in the tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Tianyang attacked instantly and decisively used an unknown special power to kill him. The third time was when Tianyang finished his heavenly tribulation and fought above the Blood Sea. At that time, Tianyang had completely grown. He killed a demon king with a flip of his hand and forced him to disperse his consciousness. Then, hundreds of demon kings died at his hands. The fourth time, they didn't meet, but he casually killed prison Blood Demon King, the 4 ancient shrine elders, and annihilated the Blood Demon army, which proved his strength. This time, Tianyang will most likely follow. To be frank, you will only be courting death if you go. The Demon Emperor sneered. Hearing this, the entire base camp quieted down. Those who could become Demon Kings weren't fools. They didn't think about it before, but now they understood. Their faces were full of humiliation. They were Demon Kings who brought endless terror to this world at different times. At this moment, they had to submit under the pressure of a human. I'll go. At this moment, a faint voice sounded. Hearing this, the Demon Emperor raised his eyebrows and smiled. The speaker, Heaven Demon King, In Tian Shao, an expert at the peak of Heaven Ascension Realm LV8. Okay. The Demon Emperor nodded heavily and then disappeared. Even if the Heaven Demon King couldn't kill Tianyang, he could definitely delay him. And he could refine that thing. Chapter 888. It didn't even take 4 hours for the million-strong army to arrive at the Blood Sea through Tianyang's spatial door. Even the Demon Emperor couldn't imagine it. Tianyang could be so fast. However, even if the Demon Emperor knew, he wouldn't care too much. After all, he had already sent out the Heaven Demon King, In Tian Shao, who was no weaker than the Devourer King, as soon as he heard the news. Even though he knew Tianyang very well, the Demon Emperor had great confidence in the Heaven Demon King. After all, he was an otherworldly demon. He was named after the Heaven Demon Clan. Is this the Blood Sea? The Heaven and Earth Spirit Shi is much weaker. The old Dragon King led the dragons of the Dragon Clan and flew in the Blood Sea for a while. He then transformed into a human and frowned at Tianyang. Although he had fought with the Demon Clan more than once, This was the first time he had stepped into the Blood Sea. Naturally, he couldn't adapt to the harsh environment of the Blood Sea. Even the old Dragon King felt uncomfortable, let alone the million-strong army. It's not that the heaven and earth spirit chi is weak, but the heaven and earth spirit chi that can be absorbed is weak. Tianyang frowned. Previously, due to his tyrannical strength, the true flames of destruction, and the endless spirit sea, he didn't reject any kind of energy. Although the Blood Sea's environment was harsh, it didn't affect him much. Therefore, he neglected the extent of the Blood Sea's impact on the Sky Continent's army. Fortunately, I'm prepared. Tianyang looked at the Sky Continent's army that had quickly built temporary land on the Blood Sea and released sea fortresses at the same time, and smiled slightly. Tianyang's military talent might not be strong, but it didn't matter. There were tens of millions of people in the Sky Continent's alliance. There was definitely one that was strong in military talent. Some people had also speculated about the way this counterattack was going to be. Apart from a decisive battle between the top experts, the most important thing was the sea battle that happened on the Blood Sea. Tianyang knew that the Blood Sea was filled with the resentment of the Sky Continent's living beings. Even the demon clan would be injured if they fell into it. If the demon soldiers and demon generals accidentally fell, they might even lose their lives. As a result, the fortress on the sea appeared. The sea fortress was built by the combined efforts of the monster race, the dragon race, and the Sword Saint sect, the three great martial Dao holy lands. Just one of them was comparable to the most majestic palace in Sky Continent. It was at the level of a peak mid-grade spirit artifact and could accommodate 50,000 soldiers. This time, they had prepared 20 ocean fortresses, which were just enough to deal with the first wave of attacks. Soon after, the 20 ocean fortresses had been fully integrated. Tianyang and the old Dragon King stood on top of the Blood Sea. Their eyes narrowed slightly. At the edge of the Blood Sea, black figures appeared one after another. At the very front, a pitch-black and abrupt light rapidly enlarged. Heavenly Cloud's continent, get ready. The enemy is attacking. The old Dragon King shouted. In the next moment, the 20 sea fortresses lit up with rays of light. They were as dazzling as the continents on the Blood Sea. And at this moment, the Heavenly Devil King, Yin Tian Shao, had arrived with 3 top-tier Devil Kings. Ants of Sky Cloud's continent die. One of the malevolent Devil King who is spitting out flames laughs loudly as he drives the flames towards the old Dragon King. He did not deal with Tianyang, who was even more conspicuous than the old Dragon King. He was clear that he would only be courting death if he went against an existence of Tianyang's level. Among the devil race, only the Heavenly Devil King, the Demon Emperor, had the power to fight Tianyang. Shadow Devil King, Flame Devil King, and Saber Devil King. Tianyang's expression turned serious as he looked at the 3 demon kings charging at him from behind Yin Tian Shao and said faintly. Killing intent flickered in the depths of his eyes. And the Heavenly Devil King, who is at the peak of Heaven Ascension Tier 8. In the next moment, Tianyang used the air-treading secret technique. His figure instantly disappeared from where he was. Oh no, he's here. The Flame Devil King's expression changed drastically as he looked at the clean space, his face filled with terror. That was an existence that had slaughtered hundreds of Devil Kings, destroyed the ancient shrine, and annihilated the Blood Devil army, including prison Blood Devil King. It would be strange if he, a Flame Devil King who was only at the peak of Heaven Ascension Tier 7, could deal with him. Tianyang, your opponent is me. At this moment, the leader of the Heavenly Devil Kings, Yin Tian Shao, snorted coldly and punched out. His handsome and sinister face instantly became incomparably ferocious as waves of devil chi gathered. Boom! A fist completely formed by devil chi struck out fiercely. Oomph! An indiscernible sound rang out. A ray of sword light flashed out from the void and directly cut through the fist print. Then, in the space, a young figure appeared. I didn't expect that there would be so many heavenly devils in the Sky Continent. Tianyang said indifferently. The number of devil kings he had met was innumerable. However, the number of heavenly devils he had met could be counted on one hand. Xiao Hongchun, the demon emperor, and the heavenly devil king, who had been hiding in Sky Blue College back then, were only 3 of them. However, heavenly devils were the supreme beings of the devil race after all. Even Tianyang felt a little surprised that 3 heavenly devils had descended in an ordinary large world. So what? In Tian Xiao, the heavenly devil king, looked at Tianyang solemnly. At this moment, Tianyang's aura was not obvious. His face was not as handsome and sinister as In Tianxiao's, and his eyes were restrained. Except for standing on the blood sea, Tianyang was just like an ordinary person. However, which ordinary person would not be afraid when facing the heavenly devil king? This could only prove that Tianyang had already controlled his strength to the extreme. Heavenly Devil King, Saber Devil King, Shadow Devil King, leave Tianyang to me. You guys go and deal with the old Dragon King. When the old Dragon King is killed, we can join forces to deal with Tianyang and kill him with our swords. In Tian Xiao, the heavenly Devil King, said as a slender, blood-red devil sword flashed in his hand. Hearing that, the 3 devil kings behind In Tian Xiao immediately nodded. As soon as they moved, they were directly bounced back by a terrifying force. Did I say that you can leave? Tianyang's face was full of smiles. The great void sword embryo in his hand glowed faintly. Streaks of heart-palpitating killing intent radiated from Tianyang's hand and sword. In Tianxiao's pupil shrank. He stared at Tianyang, who was releasing his aura and showing his cultivation at the peak of LV6 of the heaven-reaching realm. He looked incredulous. Then, this incredulous look quickly turned into extreme anger. How dare you fight against 4 people by yourself? Hearing that, the 3 devil kings, who were still confused, looked gloomy. Arrogant brat, you're courting death. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The 3 devil kings shouted angrily. They were directly infuriated by Tianyang's action, fighting against 4 people by himself. This was basically telling them Tianyang disdained to fight one-on-one. He was stepping on their faces and telling them, "Come me together. I'm in a hurry." Tianyang said indifferently. Chapter 889. Come at me together. Tianyang said with a faint smile. Hearing that, the 4 demon kings turned pale. Heaven Demon King, Fire Demon King, Saber Demon King, and Shadow Demon King. Each of them was at the peak of LV7 of the heaven-reaching realm. In Tian Xiao, the Heaven Demon King, was at the peak of LV8 of the heaven-reaching realm. If the old Dragon King was here, he wouldn't even be able to withstand one attack from In Tian Xiao. Even the Devourer Demon King could only fight against In Tian Xiao under normal circumstances. If In Tian Xiao activated the Heavenly Demon Clan's terrifying super skills, he would probably be defeated directly. After all, it wasn't without reason that the Heavenly Demon Clan could become the supreme clan of the Demon Clan. Now, in front of the 4 Demon Kings, a human whose cultivation base was lower than even the weakest among them by an entire minor realm actually dared to say such words. You're courting death. The Fire Demon King couldn't stand it anymore. He turned into flames and charged toward Tianyang. Mystical Fire 9 Demon Fist. The Flame Devil King roared loudly, his roiling devilish chi like flames that surged to the heavens, smashing viciously towards the heavenly sun. At this moment, the Shadow Demon King also merged into the shadows. His aura disappeared, and he came behind Tianyang. The dagger in his hand shone with faint cold light. The Saber Demon King was the most direct. Holding a dark blue demon saber, he stepped on the void and slashed at Tianyang's head. The 3 Demon Kings attacked at the same time. The front, the top, and the back were all blocked. Below them was the endless blood sea, which was also not the way out. Seeing this, the 3 Demon Kings revealed a smug smile on their faces. Even if Tianyang, the so-called Demon Venerable, was really powerful, he couldn't escape into the blood sea. He could only break their attacks one at a time, and then fight the other 2. No matter how one looked at it, the three demon kings would definitely injure Tianyang. However, looking at the three demon kings at the peak of LV7 of the heaven-reaching realm, Tianyang showed a trace of disdain. Peak of LV7 of the heaven-reaching realm? Who gave you the courage to fight me? Tianyang didn't move. In the next moment, the three attacks, which were enough to kill an ordinary expert at the peak of LV6 of the heaven-reaching realm, fell on Tianyang. Boom! A terrifying explosion rang out, and a terrifying cloud of dust spread out, enveloping Tianyang. Meanwhile, the three demon kings were also stunned. Tianyang hadn't done anything. Had he used his physical body to block their full-powered attacks? Haha! I thought that since Tianyang could kill hundreds of demon kings consecutively, his strength must not be weak. I didn't expect him to be an arrogant and conceited person. When the three of us joined forces, even the devouring demon king and the heavenly demon king would have to avoid our attacks. This guy actually dared to use his physical body to resist our full-powered attack. This time, he's probably deader than dead. The Flame Devil King laughed loudly, the Saber Devil King and Shadow Devil King by his side also keeping their weapons. In their opinion, Tianyang had used his physical body to take their attacks. No matter what, he would be severely injured or even killed. With the Flame Devil King present, the Saber Devil King and the Shadow Devil King already had no reason to act. In the distance, the Old Dragon King looked at Tianyang, whose figure could not be seen in the cloud of dust, with a face full of shock. He also didn't expect Tianyang to be so arrogant. The three demon kings joined forces to attack. That was a terrifying attack that he could only escape from. The Sky Continent Alliance looked at Tianyang, who had disappeared in the cloud of dust, with a face full of despair. The demon Venerable was dead? At this moment, a gust of wind blew past, and the cloud of dust instantly dispersed. A young figure appeared in everyone's sight. The Saber Devil King, the Flame Devil King, and the Shadow Devil King's pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a needle tip. The Old Dragon King and the Heavenly Demon King were full of shock. The Sky Continent Alliance was even more shocked. You guys are very creative. A faint laugh came from the cloud of dust. The next moment, the figure waved his right hand, and the cloud of dust completely dispersed. Tianyang, unharmed. Ancestral dragon tattoos shone on Tianyang's body, providing Tianyang with an endless stream of powerful dragon power. The mystic fire, nine-demon fist bombarded Tianyang's chest. It didn't even leave a fire mark. The Saber Devil King's shocking demonic saber was even more useless. The Shadow Devil King's secret assassination couldn't even pierce through a layer of skin. Not good. Retreat. At this moment, the Heavenly Demon King, Tianxiao's expression changed drastically, and he roared. But it was too late. Dragon Emperor Divine Fist, 10,000 dragons, slaying gods. Tianyang smiled slightly and punched out with his right fist. Roar! An earth-shattering dragon roar sounded, and 10,000 giant dragons appeared behind Tianyang, turning into three groups and attacking the three demon kings. Not good. The Flame Devil King, the Saber Devil King, and the Shadow Devil King's expressions changed drastically, and they hurriedly circulated their demonic chi to surround themselves. But those giant dragons seemed to be even stronger than the Old Dragon King, and they directly tore apart their demonic chi shield, sending them flying. Puff, puff, puff. Mouthfuls of blood spurted from the mouths of the three demon lords. Like kites with broken strings, the three demon lords were sent flying backward. At this moment, the Heavenly Demon King, Tianxiao's expression darkened, and he charged out. The blood-red demonic sword in his hand bloomed with Xingguang. God-slaying demonic blood. The Heavenly Demon King roared, and blood-red demonic chi wrapped around the blood-red longsword like waves. The terrifying aura of a peak heaven ascension stage, LV8, was completely released. What? The Old Dragon King's expression changed drastically, and he was extremely pale. The 1 million soldiers of the Heaven Continent Army in the 20 sea fortresses also turned pale instantly, even though Tianyong was still close to 5,000 miles away from them, even though he was fighting against 4 enemies by himself. But this terrifying aura still crossed time and space and pressed down on them. Damn it! The old Dragon King felt as if his bones were about to be crushed by a terrifying aura, and an abnormal flush appeared on his face. This was no longer an ordinary peak Heaven Ascension stage LV8. In order to defeat Tianyong, the Heavenly Demon King activated the divine power of the Heavenly Demons. 1,000 transformations, Demon God Body. The Heavenly Demon King roared and released his original form, and boundless demonic chi surrounded him. In just a few blinks of an eye, Yin Tianxiao transformed into a terrifying killing giant that was over 1,000 feet tall. Feel the wrath of the heavenly demons. 1,000 demons, Emperor Bloodsword. Yin Tianxiao roared, and the long sword in his hand that had lengthened shone with boundless blood-red light. With an extremely terrifying aura, it slashed down on Tianyong's head. Oh no! The old Dragon King's expression changed drastically, and he immediately broke free from the restraints and charged toward Tianyong. This sword was too powerful. The heavenly demons who released the 1,000 transformations Demon God Body were much more powerful than the Devourer King. However, before the old Dragon King could get within 3,000 miles, he was directly blown away by a terrifying gust of wind. The old Dragon King spat out a mouthful of blood, and his huge body was blown away like a cannonball. He could only watch as Tianyong fought against the 1,000-foot-tall Demon King with his own strength. There were also 3 severely injured Demon Kings around him, and they were ready to attack at any time. Die for me. The Tianxiao Great World will eventually be devoured by the demons. The Heavenly Demon King smiled ferociously and slashed out with his sword. The monstrous blood sea immediately surged with shocking waves and charged toward Tianyong. Is that so? Tianyong suddenly smiled faintly, and his eyes flashed. Ancestral Dragon Body, unleashed. His physical strength had reached the pinnacle. 7 Stars Secret Technique, unleashed. His soul power was raised to the peak. Finally, Martial Soul Talent, Devour Sky. The billowing, devouring power erupted. Chapter 890. Talent of Martial Soul, Sky Swallowing. This move was obtained when the Tianyao sword Martial Soul advanced to the Earth rank. Even today, it still had an extremely powerful effect. Even Tianyong didn't know why his Tianyao sword had the effect of swallowing thousands of martial souls and even demon chi. It even had the ability to forcibly seize the power of heaven and earth and turn it into its own magic. But it didn't stop Tianyong from using this talent of martial soul to crush countless people. The Tianyao sword swallowed the power of martial souls and specialized in swallowing demon chi. Although the blood sea was condensed by the power of countless creatures, most of the energy had turned into demon chi because it was refined by the demon clan with powerful means. For the Tianyao sword, it was simply a perfect tonic. Break! Tianyong roared. The next moment, the devouring power was enhanced to the extreme. The monstrous blood sea soared into the sky without anyone's guidance. It fiercely bombarded Tianyong. What's going on? Even Tianxiao felt strange at this moment. As long as no one touched the blood sea, it would be as calm as stagnant water. Why did it suddenly charge at Tianyong like a madman? However, you actually provoked the blood sea. Tianyong, I have to say you're dead meat. Tianxiao laughed wildly as he looked at Tianyong. In his opinion, no matter how powerful Tianyong was, he would not be able to withstand the attack of a terrifying existence like Shuai. However, Tianxiao's smile didn't last for 3 seconds. He was horrified to find that, when the blood sea was 3 feet away from Tianyong, it all turned into the purest demon chi and then entered Tianyong's body. After passing through the Tianyao sword, which was the nemesis of demon chi, it turned into Tianyong's energy. Imagine how terrifying the blood sea, which had swallowed countless creatures in the heaven continent, was. How great the cultivation it brought to Tianyang would be. In just a moment, 7th LV of the heaven-reaching realm. Hurry up and stop him. Yin Tianxiao reacted instantly. He roared and slashed with the demon's sword in his hand. The other 3 demon kings seemed to have woken up from a dream and charged at Tianyang. Tianyang just smiled and slashed with a long sword in his hand. An arc-shaped sword chi directly repelled the 3 demon kings. Puff! He spat out another mouthful of blood. The devil blood fell into the blood sea and became a part of the blood waves. It also transformed into a heavenly sun cultivation base. Peak of LV, 7th LV. How is this possible? Yin Tianxiao's expression changed drastically. What kind of secret skill was this? How could he raise a whole realm in such a short time? Previously, Tianyang could already kill 100 kings with his sword. Now that he had advanced another level, how strong would he be? Damn! Slash! Yin Tianxiao, robed demon, sword. And at this time, 4 stars of the 7 stars secret technique were activated. Star confinement, star strangulation. Tianyang's lips parted slightly as he spat out 8 words. The 4 stars instantly transformed the boundless soul strength into pure star force, which firmly imprisoned the demon sword. Then, strands of strangulation power attacked the demon sword. LV, 8th heavenly realm. Break! Yin Tianxiao was completely flustered. Tianyang had broken through another realm? If Tianyang had broken through to the peak of LV, 8th heavenly realm like him, wouldn't it be easy for him to deal with Yin Tianxiao, who was in the same realm? Blood sword of the demon emperor, sky-burning blood flame. Yin Tianxiao roared. Black demon chi mixed with the blood waves rushed toward Tianyang. A sword light tore through the void, carrying with it an unparalleled demonic aura as it slashed toward the heavenly sun, intending to slice him into pieces. This was the strength of Yin Tianxiao, the demon king of the celestial demons. At this moment, the blood waves around Tianyang suddenly exploded. They turned into blood flowers and fell back into the blood sea. Tianyang breathed for the last time and swallowed the surrounding pure energy into his body. Peak of LV, 8th heavenly realm. As Tianyang's strength increased, even though the grade of Tianyang's sky sword also increased, it was much more difficult for him to break through. This time, he could only break through 2 realms with the help of the blood sea. Next time, he didn't know if he could break through 1 realm. But now it was enough to break through to the peak of LV, 8th heavenly realm. Blood sword of the demon emperor? Not bad. If it can be practiced to a certain level, it might be comparable to a saint martial artist. Tianyang stood up slowly. With a wave of his hand, the star confinement dispersed. That sword had completely lost its restraints and slashed toward Tianyang's head. Break! Tianyang slashed with his sword. Everything was destroyed, and the universe was shattered. Boom! That blood flame, sword light, instantly turned into fragments and exploded. The next moment, Tianyang used the innumerable martial arts and disappeared on the spot. He arrived in front of Yin Tianxiao. 9 blood sky-burning fist. Yin Tianxiao was shocked. Then he reacted immediately and punched out. Monstrous demon chi burned. The blood sea under his feet seemed to be ignited by something. It rushed toward Tianyang with terrifying flames. However, when Tianyang saw this, he smiled calmly. He slashed with his sword. Heaven and earth seemed to be divided into black and white. Life and death were clearly separated. The first move, red spider lily blooms. In the middle of the black and white, a beautiful blood-red flower bloomed quietly. Boom! Yin Tianxiao spat out blood. A deep wound appeared on his 300-meter-tall body. Streams of life and death force revolved in the wound and kept destroying Yin Tianxiao's body. However, that punch also arrived in front of Tianyang. True destruction flame. Tianyang said softly. A pitch-black flame suddenly ignited in front of him and collided with the blood-red fist. Boom! Wave after wave of terrifying energy ripples spread out in all directions, setting off shocking waves of blood on the sea of blood. At this moment, the demon army had finally arrived. Soldiers of Heaven Continent, kill! Tianyang snorted coldly. He even had the energy to command the Heaven Continent's army. The Sword Emperor is invincible and Heaven Continent is invincible. The 20 fortresses and the millions of soldiers of the United Army roared at the same time. The next moment, they were integrated and drove the 20 fortresses toward the demon army. Meanwhile, Yin Tianxiao's face was filled with embarrassment and anger. Tianyang was fighting with him, but he still had the energy to command the army. How dare you look down on me? Go to hell. Great Demon Destruction Fist. Yin Tianxiao roared, and his whole body burned with demon qi. He poured all his strength into this punch, including the great demon god body, which was ignited by Yin Tianxiao's origin source demon qi. Seeing this, the three demon kings' eyes widened. Lord Heavenly Demon King actually burned his origin. This guy is dead, burning his origin source. This was not inferior to the Sky Demon Collapse technique. However, compared to the Sky Demon Collapse technique, it left some leeway, but the consequences were equally terrifying. Yin Tianxiao had already made up his mind to kill Yi Shiwen with this attack. Haha! At this moment, Tianyang suddenly smiled. Look down on me? No, I've never thought highly of you. Saint Martial Art, 10,000 swords returned to origin. Tianyang snorted and activated the Divine Wilderness Heaven Spirit technique. Heaven and earth trembled, and the boundless spirit sea raged. The saint stage sword principle bloomed and filled the sky with Xingguang. It transformed into a world-shocking sword that swept through the 4 seas and 8 desolations, slashing towards that extremely powerful fist. Boom! A bright light shrouded the blood sea. Both armies stopped and raised their heads. In the sky, it was a giant that was 100 feet tall. Chapter 891. The 300-meter-tall giant exploded with a loud boom. The enormous demonic qi body also turned into demonic qi that filled the sky and spread in all directions. Seeing this, not only the 3 demon kings who were still alive, but also the demon army on the blood sea. Even the humans were stunned by the slash, slaying the heavenly demon with one sword. The old Dragon King looked excited. Looking at Tianyang's tall but imposing figure, the dragon power in his body kept exploding. If we win this battle, this sword will definitely be recorded in the annals of history. The Celestial Demon King was almost invincible in Heaven Continent. Even if the old Dragon King fought against Yin Tianxiao, he would probably be defeated. After all, Yin Tianxiao's cultivation was at the peak of LV8 heaven-reaching realm. After using the great transforming demon god body and a series of other powerful super skills, his battle strength was close to LV9 heaven-reaching realm. Ordinary LV9 heaven-reaching realm cultivators couldn't even kill him. Even if they could defeat him, it would take a lot of effort and a long battle. Nobody could defeat him with one slash like Tianyang did. If he's not the Sword Emperor, there's no one in the world who can be called the Sword Emperor. The old Dragon King said excitedly. After a moment of shock, the million-strong army of Heaven Continent came to their senses. The first army of Heaven Continent, led by the 50,000 soldiers who had fought against the Blood Demon army. The million-strong army let out an earth-shaking roar. The Sword Emperor is invincible. The 20 fortresses on the sea suddenly emitted brilliant godly rays as they charged at the army of demons, which had the same number of soldiers on the sea. In the sky, Yin Tianxiao's great transforming demon god body was shattered, and so was his demon body. However, with Yin Tianxiao's cultivation, it wasn't easy for his demon soul to shatter. However, although his demon soul wasn't shattered, it couldn't escape from Tianyang's hands. Stars imprison him, Tianyang said calmly, and released the secret skill of 7 stars. The 4 stars, the W star, the Merak star, the Fectus star, and the Migres star, released many indestructible star chains, trapping Yin Tianxiao's demonic soul. who was trying to escape. No matter how hard Yin Tianxiao tried, he couldn't break free from the chains. He couldn't even shake them. After all, compared to his body in true essence, Tianyang's strongest aspect was still his soul. Wu Zun's soul energy was only one step away from condensing a primordial spirit. For a Heaven Ascension Realm Heavenly Demon King at the peak of Heaven Ascension Realm to break free from this level of soul energy, it would be a pipe dream. Tianyang did not deal with Yin Tianxiao immediately. Instead, his gaze turned towards the Flame Devil King, Saber Devil King, and Shadow Devil King, who had already fled in different directions upon seeing that the situation was bad. When Yin Tianxiao was about to lose, seeing that the wind was blowing, the three Demon Kings immediately fled for their lives. Although only 2 minutes had passed, the three Demon Kings had already fled several thousand miles away. Tut tut. Tianyang smiled slightly. Do you really think you can escape by doing this? If I want to kill someone, I won't be able to escape even in 10,000 years. In the next moment, Tianyang's figure disappeared from where he was. The secret skill of air stepping was performed. The power of space flickered, and every time it flickered, it was only a few milliseconds apart. As for the heavenly sun, it flickered again and again until it was thousands of miles away. The whole process took less than 30 seconds. Tianyang came to the Saber Devil King's side. Ah! Sensing the aura behind him, the Saber Devil King was puzzled at first. When he turned around, he was scared out of his wits. This was someone who could kill a heavenly demon with one sword strike. How could he catch up with him? He had been running desperately for more than 2 minutes. How could he catch up with him so easily? Blood origin explosion. The Saber Devil King's expression changed greatly. He roared, and a series of explosions came from his body. The Saber Devil King's aura also quickly withered. Instead, it was replaced by that extreme speed. Whoosh! The Saber Devil King's speed increased again. However, Tianyang just smiled faintly. Blood origin explosion? It's quite a novel method. I haven't seen it in my previous life. Previous life? The Saber Devil King's expression changed greatly. He turned his head in disbelief. However, Tianyang once again activated the divine desolate sky spiritual technique. The secret skill of air stepping was like a divine help, and he directly came to the Saber Devil King's side. Saber Devil Sky Splitting Strike. The Saber Devil King activated his demonic chi and made a prompt decision to attack. He didn't ask for this attack to kill Tianyang directly. However, he had already decided to escape into the Blood Sea. Even if his vitality would be greatly damaged, it was better than death. Stubborn resistance. Tianyang smiled faintly and casually slashed out with the Great Void sword embryo in his hand. Before using the heaven-devouring secret technique, Tianyang could easily kill hundreds of demons with the might of the heavenly tribulation. Among them, there was no lack of demon kings like the Saber Devil King, who were at the peak of the 7th level of the Heaven Ascension realm. Now, using the heaven-devouring secret technique, he had risen to the peak of the 8th level of the Heaven Ascension realm. Tianyang only needed to deal with this kind of demon king. One sword, boom! The majestic Saber Devil Sky Splitting Strike, and this sword fiercely collided. A resplendent light exploded. The Saber Devil King spat out blood, his entire aura declining. At this time, Tianyang's sword light slashed down. The Saber Devil King's head was separated. The remaining power of the sword light also killed the Saber Devil King's soul. This. In the distance, the Flame Devil King, who was less than 3,000 miles away from Tianyang, was instantly scared out of his wits. How many seconds had it been? From the time the Saber Devil King's blood origin explosion forced him to accelerate until now. Not even 10 seconds. 10 seconds, slaying a demon king? This might not be too frightening. At this time, Tianyang suddenly raised his head, looking at the Flame Devil King. Not good. Hurry and run. The Flame Devil King's expression changed greatly, forcibly halting his figure as he charged viciously downwards. The Saber Devil King was already dead. The Flame Devil King did not think that he could still outrun Tianyang. Now, Tianyang was probably still very wary of the Blood Sea. If he charged in himself, he could still make use of his advantage as a devil to escape with his life. However, Tianyang smiled slightly. Explode. The true flames of destruction directly charged into the Blood Sea. Using a terrifying power to the extreme, he forcibly vaporized large swathes of the Blood Sea. Meanwhile, the chi of the Blood Sea that escaped was also completely devoured into his body by Tianyang using the heaven-devouring secret technique. Anyway, this cultivation base was only temporary. No matter how much he devoured, it would not affect Tianyang at all. It was just that Tianyang was happy. The Flame Devil King, who had just wanted to plunge headfirst into the Blood Sea, was in for a complete tragedy. The might of the true flames of destruction directly caused the Blood Sea in this region to fall by close to 100 meters. This distance of 100 meters was not long, but it determined the life and death of the Flame Devil King. Swoosh! Sword Chi tore through space. The Flame Devil King's head was separated from his body. As for the Shadow Devil King, who had already fled into the Blood Sea, Tianyang did not let him off either. Executing the spatial treading secret technique, he arrived in the air above the Shadow Devil King and repeated the same move, vaporizing the Blood Sea and ending the Shadow Devil King with a single sword. Chapter 892. 3 Swords. From start to finish, Tianyang had only used 3 swords. He had already killed the 3 famous demon kings of the demon race. Seeing this scene, the people of Heaven Continent could only gasp in amazement. When one's strength reached Tianyang's level, no matter how they guessed, they could not guess the upper limit of his strength. Every time, they could only see the tip of the iceberg of Tianyang's strength. Tianyang himself was like an endless, mysterious abyss, tempting you to explore, but you could not find out. And because of this, the demon race had a headache. When one's strength reached a certain level, one's attack was not called revealing, but showing. When one was invincible, no matter how he attacked, it was impossible to find his weakness. And Tianyang, killing demon kings with 1 sword and demon kings with 3 moves. He was demonstrating what it meant to be invincible. Tianyang is the Sword Emperor. Old Dragon King could not help but speak, his voice rumbling, spreading across the Blood Sea. Heaven Continent's allied army and the Demon Race army all heard this. Even in the era after the Great Calamity, due to the decline of the martial arts civilization, there were very few who could achieve the achievement of Emperor. But no matter what standard was used, Tianyang was the Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor is godly, invincible throughout the ages. The cultivators of sky, clouds, shouted furiously again. They were filled with battle intent as they started fighting against the Demon Clan's army. Boom! Dazzling flames exploded on the Blood Sea. The demon race was only relying on their racial advantage to move freely on the Blood Sea. On the other hand, Heaven Continent's side was fully prepared. They took out 20 spiritual artifact-level ocean fortresses to fight with them. An old Dragon King, at this moment, no longer held back, brazenly attacked. Although the Demon Race army had more than 4 Demon Kings, these 4 Ascension Realm elites. But how could the remaining Ascension Realm elites be a match for Old Dragon King? Not long after, Old Dragon King had already destroyed the Demon Race's army formation one after another, cooperating with the army of 1,000,000 on the sea fortresses to carry out an inhumane massacre on the Demon Race. The Demon Clan's morale was already low, and with the Dragon King's massacre, how could they hold on? Originally, the Demon Clan's military strength was enough to crush the Sky Continent's alliance army. At this moment, they were like stray dogs, being chased around by the Sky Cloud Continent's side on their home ground, the Blood Sea. Amidst the massacre, the old Dragon King also raised his head and looked at Tianyang, who was slowly walking over with the demonic soul of the heavenly demon king, In Tian Shao. He sighed in his heart. A battle between powerhouses could indeed influence the outcome of a war. Originally, if the Sky Cloud's Continent's army and the Demon Clan's army had clashed, the Sky Cloud Continent's army would have been defeated. However, Tianyang brazenly attacked, slaying the heavenly demon with 1 strike and killing the Demon King with 3 strikes. Defeat the demon army. There was no more suspense in this battle. At this time, Tianyang absorbed the demonic energy left behind by the 3 demon kings and replenished the heavenly sword. He also brought Tianxiao's remnant soul to the high altitude. Why didn't you kill me? Tianxiao was restrained by the star chains, so he could only show a hideous and terrifying head and roared crazily at Tianyang. Originally, Tianxiao had hoped that one of the 3 demon kings could escape and spread the information about Tianyang and the Sky Clouds continent. However, the outcome made him feel hopeless. The 3 demon kings, who were assisting in the battle, couldn't even withstand 1 strike from Tianyang. The demon clan's army was also slaughtered by the Sky Clouds continent's army because of the defeat of the 4 demon kings. The heavenly demon king was defeated, and he was defeated so miserably. Let me ask you, why didn't the demon emperor attack? If he attacked, I'm afraid the outcome of the battle would be decided in an instant. Tianyang said indifferently. This was the Blood Sea, the home ground of the demon race. It was not that the demon emperor could not intervene. If he did, he would definitely be able to restrain Tianyang. At that time, the outcome of this battle would be hard to predict. However, to Tianyang's surprise, the demon emperor didn't show up from the beginning to the end. Humph! My emperor is naturally preparing for something even more important. How can he personally deal with a bunch of ants like you? Tianxiao said disdainfully. Don't think you could defeat us just because you defeated our demon clan's army. The great demon clan never cares about the outcome of a battle. The Sky Clouds continent will definitely die. Tianxiao laughed loudly. Hearing that, Tianyang frowned. Tianxiao obviously didn't have good intentions. Even now, he didn't forget to use the heavenly demon soul power to bewitch him and weaken his confidence. However, his wishful thinking had hit the wrong target. Demon Emperor? I can destroy him with a flip of my hand, just like your so-called heavenly demon soul power. Tianyang said proudly. Hearing that, Tianxiao's face changed slightly. This guy actually saw through my heavenly demon soul power? However, Tianxiao didn't care too much. Instead, he showed a mocking expression. Humph! I know you've defeated the Emperor many times, but don't think that the Emperor only has that kind of strength. The Emperor in his prime can destroy an entire territory with a flip of his hand. Even the Emperor of Earth in the past could only seal him, but couldn't kill him. Now, if the Demon Emperor refined that thing, the entire Tianxiao great world would be nothing in his eyes. Heaven's continent, from the beginning to the end, will never escape the fate of destruction. Tianxiao laughed loudly and then closed his mouth. No matter what Tianyang said or threatened him, he didn't say anything. Seeing that, Tianyang could only sigh. Since you're so uncooperative, I can only not cooperate with you. Hearing that, Tianxiao's face changed slightly, and he raised his head to look at Tianyang. However, Tianxiao's face changed greatly at a glance. The soul power of Wu Zun's realm was completely released. In an instant, Tianxiao felt that he couldn't resist at all. Tianyang directly broke through his mental defense. Damn it! You want to search my soul? Tianxiao roared crazily, and then his entire demonic soul began to vibrate violently. Don't even think about it. Even if I die, I won't let you search my soul. Before Tianxiao finished his words, a faint cold light flashed in Tianyang's eyes. He swallowed Tianxiao's divine soul directly, leaving nothing behind. Then, Tianxiao's memory of tens of thousands of years was grasped by Tianyang. The soul-devouring skill in Shantian Wuzun's memory is quite useful. No wonder he's from another world, Tianyang said with a smile. If he searched Tianxiao's soul by force, Tianxiao might have succeeded in self-detonating. However, with the soul-devouring skill, Tianxiao was almost unable to resist and was killed by Tianyang. Tianxiao's memory was almost 100% preserved. Then, Tianyang started to check carefully. After a few minutes, Tianyang's expression changed drastically. Chapter 893. The heavenly demon king had fallen just like that. Tianyang's expression turned grave. He never expected the demon emperor to have such a trump card. As expected, after 10,000 years, the demon race couldn't have done nothing. Although they didn't send out a large army, they did provide support. Tianyang's expression darkened. Even Tian Xiao wasn't sure what the demon emperor had obtained from the demon race. However, it was obvious that it wasn't something ordinary. Old Dragon King. Here, the old Dragon King had just wiped out the 10,000 demon race troops when he was summoned by Tianyang. He immediately looked up at Tianyang. The old Dragon King no longer had the aura of the East Sea Dragon Palace Lord. In this world of martial arts, strength was everything. Elders were nothing in front of strength. Even though the old Dragon King had lived for 9,000 years and had great prestige, he could only be considered a junior in front of Tianyang, who was much stronger than him. Moreover, the old Dragon King had already guessed something. Destroy this wave of demon race troops immediately and attack the demon race's base camp. Tianyang said calmly. The old Dragon King was stunned. According to the plan, after destroying the army, shouldn't they rest for a few days and wait for reinforcements from the rear before launching the attack? Why was he in such a hurry now? Although the old Dragon King was puzzled, he didn't say anything. Tianyang had never acted rashly before. He must have his reasons for doing so. Attention, Sky Continent troops. Sword Emperor Tianyang has ordered us to quickly kill the demon race, return to the sea fortress, and march towards the demon race's base camp. The old Dragon King's roar reverberated throughout the entire Sky Continent army. Instantly, the morale of the entire Sky Continent army was greatly boosted. If the old Dragon King had given this order, perhaps the Sky Continent army wouldn't have changed much. After all, they had been fighting with all their might. However, this time, it was Tianyang who spoke. The legend of Sky Continent. The existence who could kill a heavenly demon with one sword. All of a sudden, those who were able to preserve their fighting strength all burst out with 120% of their fighting strength, directly killing the demons in front of them. This time, the Devil Clan had sent out a 1,000,000-strong army. The weakest of them was at the 3rd level of the Origin Transformation Realm. As for the strongest, he had reached the 4th tier of the Heaven Ascension Realm, and was close to becoming a demon king. However, in front of the Dragon King, they were nothing. In front of the Sky Cloud Continent's army, they were weak. A short while later, the 1,000,000-strong army of the Devil race was completely annihilated. Tianyang guided the terrifying Devil Chi and swallowed it into the heavenly sword. If the demon Chi was left alone, it would invade the bodies of the soldiers of Sky Cloud's continent. If the demon Chi broke out in battle, it would be devastating. However, the demonic Chi was ethereal and hard to find. Even the old Dragon King would have a headache if he saw it. However, it was directly absorbed by Tianyang. The image of Tianyang in the eyes of the millions of soldiers of Heaven Firmament Continent rose again. At this moment, in the northern wilderness region's great formation behind them, the remaining 4 million soldiers of Heaven Firmament Continent had finished their preparations and were ready to go. They also heard the old Dragon King's message. The Sword Emperor Tianyang killed the heavenly demon with 1 strike and the demon king with 3 strikes. He led the army to annihilate the 1,000,000-strong army of the Devil race. Now give order for the 5,000,000-strong army of Heaven Firmament Continent to enter the Blood Sea and attack the Devil race. The old Dragon King's voice rang out. Hearing this, Sher Kaitian and the rest who were guarding at the back were confused. Why did they launch the attack so quickly? At this moment, a feminine voice suddenly rang out. The Devil race. Ear. The Devil race immediately let out an earth-shattering roar. Who was Tianyang? Was he the Sword Emperor of Heaven Firmament Continent? Or was he the Devil Lord of the Devil race? As a member of the Devil race, even if the Heaven Firmament Continent was not part of the Devil race, they were proud of it. Before the battle even started, their morale was high. Enter the Space Gate and step into the Blood Sea to support the Devil Lord. Ling Yuhan. as the commander of the Devil Race Army, shouted. Yes. The rest of the Devil Race Army roared again and took the lead to enter the space gate. Seeing this, Shirkaitian and the rest who wanted to discuss the matter smiled bitterly. The Devil Race was an indispensable force in Heaven Firmament Continent's army. Now that the Devil Race had entered, the rest of the army naturally had to enter as well. Tianyang must have his reasons for giving the order. The rest of the army follow the Devil Race and enter the Blood Sea, shouted Li Tianshun. The rest of the Sky Cloud's continent's allied army roared in unison. Apart from the 500,000-strong army that needed to defend the northern wilderness region, almost all of the Heaven Firmament Continent army stepped into the Blood Sea. The remaining 4 million-strong army moved quickly, but Tianyang could not wait that long. According to the Heavenly Demon King's memory, when they led the army out, the Demon Emperor had already started to refine the item from the Heavenly Demon. Now, half a day had passed. If the Demon Emperor succeeded in refining it, even Tianyang would not be able to deal with it. Therefore, Tianyang directly led the million-strong army to attack the Devil Race's base camp. Report. The Heaven Firmament Continent's army is here. A panicked roar sounded in the Devil Race's base camp. Hearing this, the Demon Kings in the Devil Race's base camp were shocked. Didn't Tianshao lead the 3 Demon Kings to intercept them? Why is the Heaven Firmament Continent's army here now? Damn it, I don't care so much. Let's go and destroy the Heaven Firmament Continent's army now. The Demon Kings were not fools. Those who could reach this stage were not fools. Although they did not understand what was going on, they made a decision in the shortest time possible. Outside, Heaven Firmament Continent's army saw the majestic palace on the Blood Sea from more than 2,000 miles away. That is the Devil Race's base camp. The Dragon King frowned. We have only gathered 2 million-strong army now. There are 3 million more on the way. If we charge in rashly, we will be killed easily. Hearing this, Li Tianshun, who had rushed over to help, nodded. That huge palace was the Devil Race's last fortress. No one knew how many Devil Race soldiers were gathered inside. Although Tianyang was powerful, it would be difficult to deal with them. If it were up to me, we should rest here. This place is not far from the Devil Race's fortress. We can attack or retreat. It's just right for us to receive the remaining 3 million-strong army. It won't be too late to launch an all-out attack after the 5 million-strong army has arrived, the Dragon King said. At this moment, Tianyang smiled faintly and rose into the air. Why go through so much trouble? In the next moment, Tianyang's figure disappeared from where he stood. Tianyang, what are you doing? Li Tianxun's expression changed drastically. At this moment, Tianyang had already arrived above the Devil Race's fortress. Looking down at the countless Demon Kings and Devil Race soldiers rushing out of the fortress, he smiled slightly. His hands formed a seal. Primordial superpower, primordial blood seal. Tianyang roared. He drew out endless power from the Blood Sea and turned it into a supreme superpower seal. It struck the Devil Race's fortress fiercely. Boom! At the top of the Devil Race's fortress. Chapter 894. 1/. He destroyed the demonic fortress. Inside the fortress, countless demon kings and demon generals who were preparing for battle suddenly noticed the emptiness above their heads. Puzzled, they looked up. Once they did, they could not look away. What's going on? In the fortress, a demon king at the peak of Heaven Ascension's 6th level had a drastic change in expression as he stared at the vast expanse of sky above his head, dumbfounded. The originally indestructible dome of the fortress had long been reduced to ashes. One could see the layers of black clouds above the sea of blood at a glance. What happened? In the distance, the Heaven Continent Alliance army was also shocked. It was different from the demons, who were completely confused. They had witnessed the entire process of Tianyang's actions, swinging his sword and destroying the fortress with their own eyes. No matter how they thought about it, the demonic fortress could not be weak. However, under Tianyang's slash, it still exploded and the entire dome turned into ashes. Tianyang's strength was strong. Invincible. What are you still standing there for? At this moment, the old Dragon King roared, and rumbling dragon roars reverberated throughout the world. All troops attack and crush them. The old Dragon King roared, and then endless dragon power erupted. His massive body suddenly shook, and he pierced through the void, leading the dragon race army and charging fiercely toward the opposite side. At this moment, everyone seemed to have awakened from a dream and hurriedly charged forward. Tianyang destroyed the fortress with one slash, creating such a great opportunity. If they still did not know to attack, then they could really go eat *T, demonic fortress. Look, there's someone there. Finally, a sharp-eyed demon king noticed the sword-wielding youth on the dome. A furious roar came from the demon king's mouth, and in the next moment, demonic aura lingered. Two gigantic bat wings suddenly spread out behind the demon king's back, shining with a black bloodthirsty light as he charged toward Tianyang. The aura of a peak heaven ascension 6th level was fully displayed. The demon king has attacked. He's an outstanding existence among the peak heaven ascension 6th level demon kings. Killing a human is absolutely easy for him, some demons said excitedly. At this moment, Tianyang also noticed the demon king charging toward him. The bat wings were huge. When fully spread out, they were at least several hundred meters long. At this moment, the demonic aura of the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage Level 6 was completely released. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of Tianyang. Why does he look so familiar? The Demon King was slightly taken aback. Then, his face darkened. No matter who you are, you must die for offending the demon race. In the next moment, the fiend Demon King's body trembled. Demonic chi went berserk, turning into numerous demonic chi saws. Seeing this, Tianyang softly grinned. You're merely at the peak of the 6th level of the Heaven Ascension realm, yet you dare to behave atrociously before me? In the next moment, Tianyang slashed out with his sword. The great void sword embryo shone with dazzling light. In the next moment, an extremely sharp and terrifying sword light swept across the world and penetrated the space. He slashed at the Demon King. Sky Extreme Sword Art, First Sword, Soaring Heavens. Although Tianyang did not use the Saint State sword principle, it was just a simple sword move. However, he also possessed a terrifying strength that was enough to terrify all demons. How is this possible? The Demon King's pupils shrank as he looked at the sword in disbelief. The countless demonic chi blades that he slashed out turned into nothingness under the aftermath of the sword, as if they had never existed in this world. In the next moment, the sword arrived in front of the Demon King. The Demon King's expression changed greatly. He hurriedly wrapped himself up with his 100-meter-long bat wings. Demonic chi surged into the bat wings, which shone with a metallic light. It seemed that he wanted to use these huge bat wings to block Tianyang's sword. However, seeing this, Tianyang smiled faintly. You're thinking too much. Boom! A terrifying sound rang out. A huge and hideous sword mark appeared on the bat wings from Soaring Heaven slash. Blood spurted out wildly. The Demon King did not seem to have noticed that his bat wings had been cut off and had already been struck by the sword. His head had been chopped off. This guy is Tianyang. The Demon King's pupils shrank as he looked at Tianyang's incomparably young face that was infamous among the demons. Didn't Heavenly Demon King and Flame Demon King attack them? Why? The Demon King's thoughts flashed through his mind. In the next moment, that sword easily tore apart the weak Demon King's devil soul. Just one sword. Tianyang's expression was indifferent. With a wave of his hand, the Demon King's demonic chi was swallowed into Tianyang's body. Below, a group of Demon Kings and Demon Generals who were looking forward to the Demon King's victory and killing the Demon King who had destroyed the Demon Fortress were all dumbfounded. One sword and the Demon King was dead? Even if the Demon King was ranked last among the Demon Kings, he was still a Demon King. Run! Even if there were Demon Kings who were stronger than the Demon King, at this moment, they made a prompt decision to escape. He was stronger than the fiendish Demon King, but not by much. If Tianyang could kill the fiendish Demon King with a single strike, it would not be difficult for him to kill him. When did such a monster appear in the human race? At such a young age, he can actually kill the Demon King with one sword? That Demon King frantically activated his demonic chi, thoughts flashing through his mind. Then, that Demon King's pupils shrank. Heavens! And at this time, Tianyang's next sword had already arrived. That Demon King's thoughts came to an abrupt end. His head flew. Tianyang directly shattered space, arriving beside this Demon King. He casually destroyed this Demon King's demon soul, swallowed the demonic chi, and rushed into the interior of the demon fortress. He did not attack those demon generals who were closer. After all, they were too weak and were not worth his time. The interior of the demon fortress was complicated, with all kinds of paths intersecting. If an ordinary person came here, even if they had great strength, they would probably be confused by this incomparably complicated path. However, in front of Tianyang, there was no such problem. The path was complicated, did not know where to go. How simple. One sword to destroy, all the walls blocking the way. In front of Tianyang, who executed the heaven-devouring mystic technique, the indestructible demon fortress was simply no different from paper paste. One sword could break it. Although more than 100 Demon Kings were killed by Tianyang, there were still quite a number of Demon Kings remaining. After all, the demon race had already started invading Heaven Continent since ancient times. After so many years, who knew how many Demon Kings were left behind? Even if most of the Demon Kings were already sealed to death, there were still quite a number of Demon Kings remaining. Therefore, even if Tianyang had already killed many Demon Kings, there were still many Demon Kings in this demon fortress. Let him kill. Who are you? Stop for me. You are a... A series of screams resounded in the Devil Stronghold. Towards the end, Tianyang already did not care whether Demon Kings were Demon Kings or not. As long as it was blocking the way, he killed it all the way. Just like this, Tianyang rampaged through the demon fortress. Chapter 895. Only 10 minutes had passed since Tianyang killed his way into the demonic stronghold. However, who knew how many demons had died under Tianyang's sword? It should be known that the devil race that could live in the devil race's fortress was definitely not weak. Most of the devil race's soldiers were born in the Blood Sea. If they died in the Blood Sea, they would not be able to take a single step into the devil race's fortress. Demons who could enter the demonic stronghold, even if they were demon generals, had to have an impressive cultivation base. After all, this was the demonic stronghold. Even so, Tianyang could kill more than 1,000 demons along the way. It was clear how destructive Tianyang's power was. The demons here were the elites of the demonic race. Killing one here was equivalent to killing 1,000 outside, a bunch of weaklings. None of them can compare to the Sky Demon King and Demon Devourer King. When he reached the center of the demonic stronghold, Tianyang breathed a sigh of relief. He turned to look behind him. As Tianyang was already a Heaven Ascension cultivator, his sense of direction was terrifyingly strong. Even if this was the demonic stronghold, it was difficult to interfere with Tianyang's sense of direction. Therefore, no matter how many walls Tianyang broke, it did not affect Tianyang's advance at all. He looked behind him. He could even see the Blood Sea and the Sky Continent's allied army approaching the demonic stronghold. But after killing so many, no matter how stupid those Demon Kings are, they should have realized something by now. Tianyang muttered to himself. It was impossible for a massive stronghold like the demonic stronghold to not have formations. Tianyang had carved defensive formations on the 20 sea strongholds that could withstand several full-powered attacks from a Heaven Ascension 5th stage powerhouse. Tianyang's unimpeded advance was entirely because the demons did not react at all. After all, this was the demonic stronghold, and the Sky Continent's allied army was thousands of miles away. Who would have thought that someone could directly kill their way into the demonic stronghold? Boom! At that moment, a powerful energy beam blasted from the front. It seemed that the demons didn't care about the walls of the fortress at all. When Tianyang sensed the energy beam, it had already broken through numerous walls and arrived in front of Tianyang. The energy fluctuation had clearly reached its peak. At the very least, it was an attack at the 7th level of the Heaven Ascension stage. I've even killed the Heaven Demon King and the Devouring Demon King. Do you think I'd be afraid of you? A 7th-tier Heaven Ascension stage expert? Seeing this, Tianyang smiled faintly. The sword in his hand slashed out. The great void sword embryo shone brightly. Boom! The energy beam was directly shattered by Tianyang's sword. It turned into specks of light that filled the sky and disappeared from the world. At this time, the demons seemed to have been prepared for this. Demonic chi began to gather. Over 100 energy light pillars shot towards Tianyang. Other than the ones behind them, there were beams of energy coming from every direction. You can easily break the full power strike of a reaching heaven state expert in the 7th tier. But what about 10 or 100? Even if the Heaven Demon King and the Devouring Demon King were reincarnated, they would have to be cautious and even avoid them. Sky Demon King, this time you'll definitely be able to injure Tianyang. Inside the fortress, a Demon King who looked extremely weak said. He was one of the Demon Kings who had been severely injured by Tianyang in the Battle of the Blood Sea when Tianyang had just completed his tribulation. He had been lucky enough to throw himself into the Blood Sea and escape with his life. At this moment, he naturally hoped that Tianyang, the Demon King killer, would die here. This formation was set up by me, a 6-tier formation Tao Supreme. It's made up of 64 small formations. Every small formation is capable of condensing a vast amount of demonic chi. As for the large formation formed by the 64 layers of formations, it is capable of fusing the energies gathered by the 64 layers of formations together to achieve a might that is even stronger than pure addition. And in the demon stronghold, besides the dozen or so great array formations that were destroyed by the heavenly sun, there are still 186 array formations remaining. No matter how powerful Tianyang is, he'll definitely be injured under the bombardment of 186 formations, said the Sky Demon King, who was in charge of the formation's core. His expression was that of wisdom and wisdom. In terms of strength, the Sky Demon King was only a 6th-tier reaching heaven state expert. He was even weaker than the Demon King Tianyang had killed with a single strike. However, the Sky Demon King status was much higher than that of the Demon King, or even the Shadow Demon King. That was because of his strength in formations. Even the Heaven Demon King and the Devouring Demon King weren't willing to fight the Sky Demon King when he was fully prepared. The slightest mishap would result in their defeat. In the demon race's stronghold, Cheong Demon King would be able to display his greatest strength. Formation combination, saturation bombardment. The Sky Demon King was all smiles as he channeled his demonic chi into the formation's core. One after another, 7th-tier, reaching heaven state attacks shot out from the 186 formations. I've never seen these formations before. Looks like they're created by the demons. Tianyang's expression changed slightly as he looked at the countless 7th-tier heavenly completion stage energy beams shooting towards him, a trace of indifference on his face. Even if Yin Tian Shao and the Devouring Demon King worked together, they'd still be flustered and might even be severely injured. However, in front of me, Tianyang said indifferently. In the next moment, he slashed out with his sword. Boom! An arc of sword light shuttled through the air like the Grim Reaper's scythe. Wherever it passed, everything was destroyed. Even the pillars of energy were no exception. Boom! Boom! A series of loud explosions rang out. It was as if heaven and earth were being shaken by this sword. Countless energy light pillars appeared at this moment. Boom! 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 He broke through the first round of saturation bombardment. The Sky Demon King's pupils constricted. No one knew better than him how powerful this formation was. Even the Sky Demon King couldn't block it. It was the most powerful defensive formation in the Demon Fortress. Yet, it couldn't block Tianyang's sword. However, this formation isn't just limited to one round of saturation bombardment. Don't celebrate too early. You can kill it with one strike, but can you kill it 1,000 times? The Sky Demon King sneered and activated the formation again. At this moment, Tianyang made his move. If I can break these formations, it'll be much easier for the old Dragon King and the others to enter this place. Tianyang's mind flickered, and in the next moment, he disappeared from where he stood. You can't escape. Kill him. The Sky Demon King laughed. At this moment, Tianyang's figure flickered as he passed through one of the energy beams. Then, he slashed out with his sword, and another 186 fireworks bloomed. Again, the Sky Demon King snorted coldly. However, his pupils suddenly dilated. The direction he's going. Oh no! Overload bombardment. The Sky Demon King roared. At this moment, Tianyang stopped. Looking at the incomparably hidden formation runes below, he raised the long sword in his hand. It won't be easy to break this formation. Not only is its defense strong, but the core of the formation is also hidden well. You won't be able to break it without 2 hours. The Sky Demon King couldn't help but mock. At this moment, the Sky Demon King beside him suddenly trembled. He looked at the image reflected by the core of the formation. He spat out 4 words with difficulty. 2 hours? Boom! An explosion sounded. Tianyang casually swung his sword. Chapter 896. How is this possible? Cheong Demon King roared in disbelief. He was extremely confident in his cultivation of formations, believing himself to be the strongest existence in Tianshao Great World. This series of formations was one of the strongest he'd ever created, be it in terms of performance, defense, or concealment. They were all at the peak of Cheong Demon King's abilities. It could be said that these formations were the culmination of Cheong Demon King's life's work. However, the concealment formations that Cheong Demon King was so proud of had been destroyed by Tianyang in an instant. Even the entire formation was reduced to ashes. Damn it, I don't believe it. This guy must be lucky. Overload. Cheong Demon King roared. The remaining 185 formations instantly glowed red and shot out beams of 7th-tier Heaven Ascension energy at a much higher frequency than before. However, Tianyang had been able to withstand the overload bombardment of 186 formations before. Now, he was still overloaded, but Tianyang had already destroyed 1 formation, allowing Tianyang to move with greater ease. Next, Tianyang released his soul force to sense his surroundings, instantly grasping the location of the next formation. Then, his figure flashed. The long sword in his hand swung out continuously, detonating 1 energy light pillar after another. Using the myriad movement technique, he moved forward like a ghost. If he couldn't dodge, he would shatter them. Just like that, Tianyang arrived at the location of another great array in less than a minute. The cores of these formations aren't all in one place. Even if you find the previous one, it won't be of any use. Cheong Demon King taunted. He was the supreme formation master of this world, and was extremely confident in the formations he'd set up. Although this array formation was all the same, in his hands, it turned something rotten into something magical. The normally fixed core became very flexible. Every formation had its own unique location. If one wanted to find it and destroy it, they would need to have a formation Dao cultivation that was not weaker than the Cheong Demon King. Or he could use brute force to shatter it. No matter what, Demon King Cheong was still a Devil King at the 6th level of the Heaven Ascension realm. Furthermore, these grand formations had received the support of the Demon Emperor. Using brute force to break them was naturally impossible. That was why Demon King Cheong was so confident. Tianyang would never be able to destroy the next formation. Boom! At this moment, another loud sound was heard. Demon King Cheong narrowed his eyes and sneered. How many energy pillars did this guy destroy? It's useless. As long as you don't destroy the formation will constantly absorb energy from the sea of blood and release pillars of energy, one after another. By then, we will be able to grind this Sword Emperor to death. Cheong Devil King laughed heartily, but he didn't hear the other Devil King's praises. A puzzled look appeared on his face. He lowered his head and looked at the image projected by the core of the formation. Instantly, his worldview collapsed. What a piece of trash. The position of the formation's core can be changed, but it's too rigid. As long as you find the pattern, you can find the core even with your eyes closed. This Devil King is really trash. If he wasn't a devil, I would have sent him to the northern wilderness to see what a formation is. Tianyang's mocking voice was heard. Hearing this, Demon King Xiong's face turned green. Flames of anger burned in his heart. Nonsense. In the next moment, Demon King Xiong's mouth was forcefully shut. Tianyang had actually closed his eyes and casually swung his sword. He had destroyed the 183rd formation. This, Demon King Xiong was stunned. However, Tianyang's body was still changing. Boom, 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 boom. A series of explosions came from the core of the formation. Demon King Xiong was stunned in place. He must have hit the jackpot. He found one formation and found everything. That must be it. That must be it, Demon King Xiong muttered to himself. The Demon King beside him was speechless. Who was the one who said that the core of each of the 186 formations was unique? However, the Demon King did not have the mood to mock Demon King Xiong, because the more Tianyang broke the formations, the faster he moved. At this moment, he was already at the third formation, and they were at the first of the 186 formations. Demon King Xiong, hurry up and run, the Demon King roared. In the next moment, he activated his demonic chi and charged behind him. However, he had only run a few dozen meters when he suddenly realized something. The area he was in had been locked down by astral chains. He could feel his demonic soul trembling with just a touch. It's over. He's here. The Demon King collapsed, his face filled with despair. He'd seen Tianyang kill 100 Demon Kings with a single strike. He also knew that Tianyang had killed 4 Demon Kings with 4 strikes. He'd also seen Tianyang break through the fortress with a single strike and slaughter 1,000 Demon Kings. Even if he was at his peak, he wouldn't be able to withstand a single strike from Tianyang. Not to mention, his battle prowess was less than a tenth of what it was now. Demon King Xiong's battle prowess was completely insignificant. He's here? Demon King Xiong seemed to have lost his mind. He turned his head and saw the astral chains. And the moment he turned his head, a voice rang out. A beam of sword light cut through space and shattered the formation core in front of him. Boom! The demonic fortress had 186 sixth-grade formations. Demon King Xiong had spent a lot of effort and resources to construct this defense system. It was destroyed just like that. Demon King Xiong turned his head in a daze and saw Tianyang descend from the sky like a god. Sword in hand, wind and lightning in his palm, and stars beneath his feet. His emperor aura was unparalleled. Before I die, may I know how you managed to break my 186 formations? Demon King Xiong gritted his teeth and asked. As a formation Dao sovereign, he was much more capable than the self-proclaimed Pill Dao sovereign of the ancient Divine Hall's third elder. Naturally, he couldn't understand how Tianyang had broken through the formations as easily as slaughtering chickens and dogs. Although your formations have different cores, they're still limited by the formation itself and must be within a certain range. And this range is also restricted by the formation and follows a certain pattern. No matter how deep you hide, it'll only take a glance to find the pattern. Tianyang said faintly. His soul power had reached Wu Zun's level, and his formation, Dao cultivation, wasn't any weaker than Demon King Xiong's. It was a piece of cake for him to do this. Demon King Xiong was dumbfounded. Then he laughed bitterly. Finding a pattern to break the formation was much better than simply finding the formation, to break the formation. I never thought I'd be able to see such a formation Dao sovereign before I die. I, Demon King Xiong, called myself a formation Dao sovereign for 50,000 years. What a joke, what a joke. Demon King Xiong threw his head back and laughed maniacally. In the next moment, demonic chi circulated in his hands. In the next moment, he stabbed his hands into his chest. Blood spurted out. I, Demon King Xiong, can die without regrets after seeing such an existence before I die. He pulled his hands out. Chapter 897. The Xiong Demon King was dead. Tianyang didn't know that the Qiong Demon King was a formation supreme who wasn't inferior to him in terms of formation skills. Even if he knew, he wouldn't have let his guard down. In fact, he would have been even more ruthless. After all, a formation supreme was respectable, but if the enemy was a formation supreme, Tianyang had to kill them all. At this moment, the other Demon King trembled and looked at Tianyang. Then, without any hesitation, he stabbed his own heart with both hands. Even the Qiong Demon King couldn't compare to him in terms of decisiveness. Whatever, I could devour it anyway. Tianyang waved his hand, and the surrounding demonic qi rushed toward him like a raging river. Tianyang swallowed it all into his heavenly sword. The heavenly sword glowed faintly, as if it was very satisfied with the demonic qi. However, it was still far from being superior to the heaven tier. At this moment, Tianyang frowned. He slashed out with his sword. Boom! A terrifying sound was heard. However, this time, Tianyang didn't feel that the sword light had been successfully shattered. Instead, it was the sword light that was obliterated. Tianyang's expression turned serious. Tianyang's sword wasn't invincible, but there were less than 5 people in the entire Tianshao Great World who could block his sword. The Heaven Demon King and the Demon Devourer King were 2 of them, and he was one of them. The last one was the Demon Emperor. Now that the Heaven Demon King and the Demon Devourer King had died under his sword, and they were in the center of the demon race's base camp, the culprit was out of the blue. Demon Emperor, weren't you refining something? Why are you out now? Tianyang smiled faintly and looked at the place where the astral chain had been torn apart. His voice was clear and loud, and the surrounding demon generals who wanted to check out the situation were all killed by his faint laughter. At this moment, a sinister and terrifying voice sounded. That's right, I was indeed refining something. However, before I could finish refining it, you came. It's not enough to kill 100 devil kings of my devil clan. You even killed your way into my fortress and destroyed all the defensive formations in my fortress. You killed more than 300 devil kings and thousands of elite devil generals. Even the Firmament Devil King, the only formation Dao Paragon of the devil race, died at your hands. Tianyang, if I don't kill you, I swear I won't be a demon. The Demon Emperor's furious voice resounded, and in the next moment, monstrous demonic energy bloomed. Waves of terrifying devil qi rushed towards Tianyang. At this moment, Tianyang's expression remained unchanged as he casually slashed out with his sword. Boom! The demonic qi current and the sword light collided violently. In the next moment, Tianyang was shocked. Half-step Wuzun, above the Blood Sea, as Tianyang had destroyed the fortress and slaughtered his way into the devil race's main camp. The Heaven Continent's allied forces no longer had any scruples and directly charged towards the devil race's main camp. However, the devil race did not wait for death. They also sent out countless troops to clash fiercely with the Heaven Continent's allied forces. Kill all these devil bastards and restore the glory of Heaven Continent. Heaven Continent is ours. Deafening roars resounded above the Blood Sea as countless soldiers engaged in close combat. Dozens of fortresses on the sea erupted with terrifying attacks. At the same time, the devil race's side also erupted with devil qi light pillars. Blood and fire intertwined, causing the already bloody Blood Sea to become even redder. Strange. There are many devil race people, but why is there not a single devil king? The old dragon king exhaled and destroyed 100,000 devil race soldiers with a breath. He had a strange expression on his face. At the same time, Shirkaitian also punched out, shattering the devil qi light pillars with the force of a landslide. Indeed, even if Tianyang killed many devil kings, the devil race shouldn't have no one to use. Shirkaitian was puzzled. As long as the devil race did not have a screw loose, they would definitely send out devil kings of equal strength to restrain them. However, the battle had already been going on for 10 minutes, and the devil race was still slaughtering happily, expanding the Heaven Continent's advantage to an unprecedented extent. It was as if the devil race had no one left. It doesn't matter. No matter what the devil race is planning, these devil race soldiers are their foundation. As long as we do our best to kill these devil race soldiers, it will be perfect, the old Dragon King said. Hearing this, Sir Kaitian nodded. Together, several Heaven Ascension realm powerhouses of Heaven Continent erupted with peerless power and bombarded the devil race army. Suddenly, the battle became one-sided. Heaven Continent's 5 million devil race soldiers had yet to be fully assembled, and the devil race had tens of millions of devil race soldiers. However, under the joint attack of countless powerhouses, the tens of millions of devil race soldiers were like tofu, unable to withstand a single blow. In just 10 minutes, over 1 million devil race soldiers had died. Even the Heaven Ascension realm elite devil generals had died many times over. The old Dragon King and the others were still puzzled as to why there were no devil race soldiers. But how would they know? The devil kings of the devil race had long been killed by Tianyang. Half Wuzun, above the Blood Sea, the old Dragon King led millions of Heaven Continent soldiers to slaughter the tens of millions of devil race soldiers. In the devil race's fortress, Tianyang revealed a shocked expression that he had never shown before. In the next moment, Tianyang's expression changed drastically. He used the 10,000 movement technique and retreated rapidly. Boom! The sword that Tianyang had slashed out was destroyed once again. The remaining devil chi slammed into the spot where Tianyang had been standing earlier. However, even though he had dodged the attack, Tianyang's face was still grave. Although the Demon Emperor was powerful, he was only at Heaven Ascension Stage 9. Although he could crush the Heaven Demon King and Devouring Demon King, he was not that powerful. Even though Tianyang knew that the Demon Emperor had obtained a powerful being, he had calculated that the Demon Emperor would at most be at the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage 9, which was equivalent to him in his previous life. Although it would be difficult, he might still be able to put up a fight. But now half Wuzun, how is this possible? The power of the great Lord Heaven is not something that a native of the outside world like you can understand. If you had not interrupted my refinement, I might have directly stepped into the Demon Venerable realm. However, as a half-Demon Venerable, I can still crush you. The Demon Emperor sneered. In the next moment, he pointed a finger. The extremely pure Devil Chi turned into a terrifying Devil Chi finger and slammed toward Tianyang. Sky Sword Technique, Fourth Sword Firmament. Tianyang roared, and the great void sword embryo in his hand slashed out a dazzling sword light. Above the firmament, stepping on the earth, no one could be his opponent. However, in front of his finger, it still shattered instantly. Chapter 898. Tianyang spat out blood, and the great void sword embryo in his hand was almost sent flying. Too powerful. The gap between a half-step Wuzun and a peak LV9 reaching Heaven Realm was not something that could be made up with numbers. Wuzun had already condensed his primordial spirit, stepped out of the world, and could travel in the sea of stars. As for those at the peak of LV9 reaching Heaven Realm, they were still confined to the world and had mastered some superficial laws. As for the half-step Wuzun, they also had some Wuzun power, such as the current Demon Emperor. He had already refined part of the treasures given by the great Lord of Heaven and reached an unprecedented level. He was also an absolute powerhouse among the half-step Wuzun. Refining treasures to become Wuzun is, after all, a small path. Aren't you afraid that your martial arts path will be cut off in the future? The ancestral dragon body kept working, healing Tianyang's injuries one after another. He forced himself to get up and said, gritting his teeth, the Demon Emperor's attack had almost broken his bones. However, the ancestral dragon body was a powerful body that carried the bloodline of countless divine dragons. As long as it was not completely cut off, it could be recovered quickly. Even if it was really cut off, it could be reborn with enough time. Because of that, although the attack from before was extremely powerful, the Heavenly Son still managed to recover. My martial arts path will be cut off. Ridiculous. As long as I successfully occupy this world, the great Lord of Heaven and even the demon saint will give me treasures. At that time, at most, your foundation will be flawed. The demon emperor said disdainfully. Hearing this, Tianyang gritted his teeth and slashed out with the great void sword embryo in his hand. Skypole's sword technique, fifth sword, trampling all lives. Trampling all lives, dominating heaven. As the sword slashed out, it was as if it was going to slash apart the entire galaxy. However, facing this sword, the demon emperor just smiled disdainfully. Demonic aura surged as he pointed out a finger. Boom! The dazzling sword light was completely destroyed by the finger. Tianyang's pupils contracted, and he used the 10,000 Tao movement technique and disappeared on the spot. That was how he managed to dodge the attack. However, an incomparably terrifying hole was also punched into the Devil Fortress by this finger. That is, far away, the old Dragon King shuddered as he looked at the demonic fortress in disbelief. Although he was 1,000 miles away, he could still clearly feel the extremely terrifying pressure. Demon Emperor, it actually appeared, and he's so strong. Sure, Kaiyan's expression changed drastically as he said. Although that aura was thousands of miles away, it didn't have much energy left. However, sure, Kaitian and the old Dragon King did not even have the slightest bit of resistance in the face of that terrifying pressure that surpassed the heavens and the earth. If not for the distance between them, they would have been tossed into the blood sea by now. With Tianyang dealing with the Demon Emperor, we should be able to hold on. Now, the most important thing is to deal with the demon army. As long as the demon army is destroyed, no matter how strong the demon emperor is, he won't be able to do much. Sure, Kaitian made a prompt decision and ignored the powerful aura. He circulated his energy and attacked the heavily injured demon army again. Hearing this, the old Dragon King nodded. However, they did not know how strong the half-step Wuzun was. The half-step Wuzun had already taken half a step and was outside the world. Although the barrier of Heaven Continent was extremely strong now, the half-step Wuzun could still break through the barrier and travel around the world. Just like the true martial Dragon Emperor, such an existence could destroy a country with a flip of his hand. With a full blow, he could completely change the terrain of Heaven Continent. Whether or not there was an army of 10 million soldiers, it was nothing to the half-step Wuzun. The half-step Wuzun could fight an army of 10 million soldiers alone. The old Dragon King and Sir Kaitian didn't know about this. However, they could still feel the terrifying despair. In the demon fortress, Tianyang spat out a mouthful of blood. He once again broke a few solid walls of the demon fortress, his body covered in wounds. The 108 Ancestral Dragon marks had been released to the limit. Endless Ancestral Dragon power was released. Even if there were 10 heavenly demon kings and the Demon Devourer King, Tianyang was confident that he could kill them. However, in front of the Demon Emperor, he was still unable to withstand a single blow. Dragon Emperor Divine Fist, 10,000 dragons slaughtering gods. Tianyang roared, and thousands of ancestral dragon power erupted. Dragon roars rang out, and with endless dragon power, he punched out, bombarding the Demon Emperor. Ha! The Demon Emperor smiled faintly, his face full of mockery. You dare to talk about slaughtering gods? The Demon Emperor flipped his hand. Demonic chi surged like a storm. The 10,000 dragons slaughtering gods' fist was crushed by the demonic chi storm. Even Tianyang, who was far away, spat out a mouthful of blood due to the backlash of the aura. The demonic inheritance bead bestowed by the great Lord of Heaven is indeed powerful. I have only refined 70 to 80% of it, and I have already reached such a realm. If I refine the rest, even if I can't directly enter the Demon Venerable realm, I will be infinitely close to the Demon Venerable realm. At that time, who in this world can stop me? The Demon Emperor laughed loudly. Hearing this, Tianyang gritted his teeth, his face full of unwillingness. If he and the Demon Emperor only used basic combat, Tianyang was completely capable of killing him. However, the Demon Emperor had a backer. With the demon race, who ruled over all the worlds as a backer, Tianyang, even if the Great Emperor was reborn, he was just a native. Moreover, the current Tianyang, in terms of strength, was no weaker than his previous life. The advantage brought by the great emperor's rebirth had been exhausted. You demon race, don't even think about touching heaven continent until you die. Tianyang's eyes widened in anger. With a roar, the aura of his whole body bloomed. The heavenly sword released rays of nine-color Xinguang, the true power of heaven and earth blooming. Martial soul talent, devouring heaven. Tianyang roared, and the extremely terrifying devouring power bloomed again. Second, martial soul talent. At this moment, Tianyang had reached the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage 8 under the effect of the Devouring Heaven secret technique. However, Tianyang activated the Devouring Heaven secret technique again, which was comparable to the ultimate sublimation of the martial soul. However, the ultimate sublimation was targeted at the martial soul. Second, martial soul talent would damage the body's origin. Monstrous demonic chi, enter my sword. Tianyang roared to the sky. Rolling pressure bloomed, and actually defeated the finger that the demon emperor tried to break. At the same time, countless demonic chi turned into the purest energy and poured into Tianyang's body. Puffed, puffed. Streaks of blood bloomed on Tianyang's body. Streams of blood splattered. Even with the strength of the ancestral dragon body, it couldn't withstand the pressure of a second martial soul talent. However, the second Devouring Heaven secret technique finally had an effect. Heaven Ascension Stage 9. Heaven Ascension Stage 9. Half a step. Seeing this, the Demon Emperor's face froze. I didn't expect you to have such a trump card. However, the final outcome of Heaven Continent will not change. Lord the Great Lord Heaven, please make your move. The Demon Emperor shouted loudly. In the next moment, a demonic pearl suddenly flew out from his dantian. The demonic pearl rotated, condensing into a huge demonic shadow, and punched out. Boom! Tianyang's martial soul talent was instantly interrupted. Blood spurted from his mouth. Although he didn't die, his aura was also fixed at the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage 9. He couldn't take half a step into Wuzun. Bastard! Tianyang roared with bloodshot eyes. Chapter 899. The Great Lord of Heaven. He had once fought with Shantian Wuzun and suppressed him. Now, he was a terrifying demon venerable who was half a step away from becoming a demon saint. Even in the countless worlds, demon venerable Hua Tian was a supreme being. The terrifying demonic orb bestowed by such an existence was naturally extraordinary. Even though the Demon Emperor had already refined 70 to 80% of the energy, the remaining energy was still enough to cause fear in others. Damn it! Immemorial blood seal. Tianyang's pupils shrank. With a roar, he formed a seal with both hands and released the true origin of the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage. However, upon seeing this, the Demon Emperor merely sneered. What a futile resistance! Demon Venerable, kill him! The huge demonic shadow suddenly released rays of demonic light and shot toward Tianyang. At this time, the immemorial blood seal had also finished condensing. With the terrifying power of an immemorial divine power, it collided with the demonic light. In the next moment, boom! Following a series of shocking blasts, the fortress of the demon tribe began to crumble. The space was torn apart. The blood sea was surging, and heaven and earth trembled. In the distance, the aftershocks wreaked havoc, killing the remaining hundreds of thousands of demonic soldiers and the tens of millions of demonic soldiers. The Sky Continent's Alliance army also suffered nearly 1 million casualties in the aftershocks. The old Dragon King, Shi Kaitian, Li Tianshun, and the other Alliance elites vomited blood and were sent flying. They could not resist at all. They were severely injured in an instant. This was no longer a battle between Heaven Ascension Stage cultivators, but a battle that was infinitely close to Wuzun's realm. Faintly, even the world barrier was trembling. Puffed. The immemorial blood seal naturally could not block the attack of the Great Lord of Heaven's Shadow. Even if it was only one attack, it was infinitely close to Wuzun's realm. Even though the immemorial blood seal was an immemorial divine power, it was still extremely difficult to fight against an enemy of a higher realm. Below Wu Zun, everyone was an ant. Tianyang's muscles were torn apart, and blood spurted out from his body, shooting into the sea of blood. He was sent flying, and blood spurted out from his mouth like a waterfall. The sharpness of the great void sword embryo in his hand also dimmed significantly. Those below the demon venerable are all ants. Even if I'm not a demon venerable yet, it's still easy for me to deal with a native of a macro world like you. The demon emperor looked at Tianyang, who was sent flying with a single blow, with an indifferent expression on his face. In his opinion, Tianyang was already a dead man. In the end, Tianyang fell into the sea of blood. Even though the blood sea was formed by countless creatures in Sky Cloud's continent, the resentment in it had already lost its consciousness. Anyone who entered the blood sea would be attacked indiscriminately. Even though Tianyang was a creature of Sky Cloud's continent, it was the same. The attack of the sea of blood was not just the pressure of the sea of blood itself, but also the impact of countless grievances on the soul. Now, Tianyang's physical body was severely injured, and his soul was also severely damaged. Coupled with the impact of the endless grievances, he was almost torn apart. This is the result of fighting against the demon race. The demon emperor sneered and looked at the remaining 4 million soldiers of Sky Cloud's continent. Because of the battle between Tianyang and the demon emperor, the remaining 4 million soldiers had suffered countless casualties. The remaining combat power was not even comparable to the previous 1 million soldiers. Moreover, Wu Zun's cultivation level was equivalent to 10 million soldiers. Even though the demon emperor was not a demon venerable, it was easy for him to deal with the 4 million soldiers of Sky Cloud's continent, who were at least in the illuminating Qi realm. If it weren't for the demon orb bestowed by the great Lord of Heaven, I'm afraid we would have been defeated by the ants of Sky Cloud's continent. However, there are no ifs. Now, the demon race is the sole ruler of this world. The demon emperor sneered, and in the next moment, he waved his hand. In the blood sea, tens of thousands of huge waves suddenly rolled. The seawater rose and turned into illuminating Qi realm demon soldiers. With the injection of the blood sea's water, the cultivation of these demon soldiers was still increasing rapidly. In just a few blinks of an eye, they rose to the terrifying essence transformation realm, killing Tianyang in one move and creating an army of 10 million soldiers. Seeing this, the old Dragon King and Sir Kaitian, who still had a trace of life, turned pale. Originally, they still had the advantage of having a strong army. Against the Demon Emperor alone, they might not lose. However, not only could the Demon Emperor fight an army of 10,000 soldiers and horses alone, he could even use the power of the Blood Sea to create an army of demons. This power was simply terrifying. The chances of Sky Cloud's continent winning, 0. Even the Sword Emperor was defeated. Hurry up and run. Finally, someone couldn't bear the fear in his heart and directly ran back. He didn't care if he could still maintain his true essence and walk on the sea midway, or if the demon soldiers would attack him from behind. When one person did so, it immediately led countless people to do the same. The morale of Sky Cloud's continent's army collapsed with this sentence. In the blood sea, in the endless blood, an alien with dragon tattoos all over his body was still barely able to avoid being assimilated by this blood-colored world. However, although he wasn't assimilated, the dragon tattoos that supported a shield were rapidly dimming and shrinking. Damn the Demon Emperor! Damn the great Lord of Heaven! Tianyang gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. However, when he opened his mouth, he spat out a large mouthful of blood. The Demon Emperor's attack, just now, was too terrifying. When the great Lord of Heaven attacked, even if it was just an illusion, it wasn't something he could deal with. Shintian Wuzuan still has some power, but there's no way for me to deal with the great Lord of Heaven. Tianyang gritted his teeth, and the great void sword embryo in his hand became dimmer and dimmer. The sky cloud sword crazily devoured the surrounding demon Qi in an attempt to resist the corrosion from the blood sea. However, it was futile. However, Even if there's only a trace of Shuntian Wuzuan's power, I'll still use it. As long as I'm still alive, Skycloud's continent won't be destroyed. A crazed look flashed in Tianyang's eyes. In the next moment, the divine wilderness heaven spirit art was activated rapidly. The 10,000 divine flames ability was released, and the true flames of destruction burned. In this blood sea, a vacuum was forcibly burned out. At the same time, Tianyang's true essence burned. In his soul sea, the small amount of Shuntian Wuzuan's power erupted. A pillar of light broke through the blood sea's restraint and soared into the sky. He's not dead yet. The demon emperor was stunned and looked at the blood sea that erupted with the pillar of light. The demon emperor was very familiar with the aura contained in the pillar of light. His doppelganger had died at the hands of this aura. However, if you're struggling at death's door, you might be able to live for another 1,000 or 10,000 years. However, since you still dare to court death, don't blame me for being ruthless. The demon emperor snorted coldly. In a flash, he arrived above the pillar of light. And at this moment, boom, Sword Star City, which had been covered by the blood sea for a long time, suddenly erupted with a terrifying xinguang. The power of Wuzun at its peak was like a bolt of world-destroying divine thunder as it violently surged out. The surrounding blood sea instantly turned into water vapor. And at this moment, in the center of Sword Star City, the sword that had been sleeping for eternity opened its eyes. Whoosh! Within the blood sea, the space split open and the sword disappeared from its original spot. Even if I burn up the last drop of my blood, as long as I don't die, you, Demon Emperor, can forget about taking the last step. Tianyang roared and rushed out of the blood sea with a long sword in hand. The true flames of destruction burned fiercely, turning into a shocking flame. He stared at the Devil Emperor with a crazed look in his eyes. The ant's final clamor. The Demon Emperor's expression was indifferent as demonic chi condensed in his hand. That huge demonic shadow was about to bloom with a terrifying demonic light. And at this moment, boom, behind the Demon Emperor, a spatial hole exploded. A long sword directly pierced through the demonic chi around the Demon Emperor's body and rushed towards Tianyang. Seeing this, the Demon Emperor's pupils constricted, and Tianyang also revealed a carefree laugh after being stunned for a moment. The Great Void Sword embryo was kept in the space bag. In Tianyang's hands. Chapter 900. All Heaven's Sword. Ever since Tianyang had left, it had turned into a meteor and had not reacted at all. However, no one knew that the All Heaven's Sword, which seemed to have lost all its magical powers, was actually an unparalleled holy artifact. Among them was the vast and terrifying power of Wuzun. The surging power of Shuntian Wuzuan passed through the All Heaven's Sword and into Tianyang's body. Tianyang's face also burned with a raging, fighting spirit. When Shuntian Wuzuan's power entered Tianyang's body, it would not replace Tianyang's own true essence. On the contrary, it would transform into Tianyang's own true essence and strengthen Tianyang's power. Although Shuntian Wuzuan's power was ultimately not Tianyang's own power, it could still cause Tianyang's realm to soar. Boom, boom, boom. Tianyang, who had been interrupted by the Demon Emperor and had failed to break through to the half-step Wuzun realm, directly stepped into the half-step Wuzun realm. At the same time, the heavily damaged bones and flesh that had been shattered by the Demon Emperor rapidly healed under the infusion of Wuzun's power. Tianyang's soul also recovered to its peak state in the blink of an eye. This is a holy artifact. The Demon Emperor's pupils constricted as he stared in disbelief at the all-heaven's sword that had flown out from the depths of the blood sea and automatically landed in Tianyang's hand. With his experience, he could naturally see the extraordinariness of the all-heaven's sword with a single glance. The all-heaven's sword that Tianyang had seen before was only the best of the half-step holy artifacts. However, that was the all-heaven sword that had been heavily damaged after the battle with the great Lord of Heaven. The all-heaven sword was named after the heavens. How could a sword in the hands of a peak Shuntian Wuzuan like Wuzun be an ordinary half-step holy artifact? Ever since it had acknowledged Tianyang, The all-heaven sword had automatically shut off all its senses and focused on absorbing the surrounding spiritual chi of heaven and earth to recover. Although it had not fully recovered from its heavy injuries, the all-heaven sword had recovered to the level of a holy artifact. It was far from being comparable to an ordinary half-step holy artifact. You have good eyesight. With the infusion of Shun Tian Wuz's power, Tianyang's aura. Soon, from an ordinary half-step martial saint, his cultivation soared to the same level as the demon monarch. Then, it vaguely reached the level of Wuzun. I didn't expect there to be a holy artifact in the Sky Continent, and I haven't discovered it yet. The Demon Emperor's eyes darkened, and greed flashed in them. However, you're just a native of the great world. Why do you have to use a holy artifact? Only I have the right to use a holy artifact of this level. The Demon Emperor roared at the sky. In the next moment, his figure disappeared, and he appeared in front of Tianyang, punching out. Monstrous demonic chi surged as he punched out. The blood sea surged, and the space exploded. Demonic chi was like a river and an ocean, suppressing Tianyang. Sky Extreme Sword Art, Third Sword Star Burial. Tianyang snorted coldly, and the all-heavens sword in his hand slashed out. At this moment, he was equivalent to a peak half-step Wuzun. Compared to the Demon Emperor, he was not weaker at all. At this moment, the sword was completely capable of resisting the Demon Emperor. Boom! The Demon Emperor's fist and the Star Burial sword collided fiercely. A shockwave exploded. The surrounding blood sea was forcibly evaporated by hundreds of meters. In some places, the land that originally belonged to the Sky Continent was even exposed. However, in the next moment, the blood sea surged up again, and the Demon Emperor punched out once again. Demon Emperor, Sky's Sealing Seal. The Demon Emperor roared, and his original killer move was used. Streams of demonic chi flew out from the blood sea and fell into the Demon Emperor's hands. As the Demon Emperor's hand seals changed, they formed a terrifying demonic seal and attacked Tianyang. Tianyang was not to be outdone. Without any fear, he swept out the all-heaven sword. Soul-shattering nine nether, wrath of a nether spirit. This sword merged with the soul of Wuzun's realm. Tianyang had already condensed a half-step primordial spirit. Compared to the Demon Emperor, he was innately stronger. Now that these two moves were used together, for a moment, they actually suppressed the Demon Emperor's Sky Sealing Seal. Lord, the great Lord of Heaven, lend me a hand. At this moment, the Demon Emperor suddenly roared. The huge demonic figure suddenly opened his eyes. Two powerful demonic lights suddenly shot out from his pitch-black eyes. They attacked Tianyang fiercely. At this moment, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. Boundless anger rose from the all-heavens sword in his hand. Holy Marshal, 10,000 swords return. Tianyang roared and slashed out the all-heavens sword. The all-heavens sword had fallen into Heaven Continent, because Shun Tian Wuzun had been severely injured in the battle with the great Lord of Heaven. Now, although Tianyang had become the temporary master of the All-Heaven Sword, All-Heaven Sword still could not suppress its anger in the face of the power of the murderer who had suppressed Shun Tian Wuzun. At this moment, Tianyang's figure seemed to faintly overlap with the figure of Shun Tian Wuzun, who had fought with the great Lord of Heaven countless years ago. The all-heavens sword bloomed with endless brilliance, carrying the might of a holy marshal as it collided with the two demonic lights. Boom! At this moment, the space exploded. A terrifying gust of wind sent the Demon Emperor and Tianyang flying thousands of miles. Blood spurted from their mouths, but their auras were still at their peak. Raging flames burned on Tianyang's body. A portion of them landed on the Demon Emperor, causing the Demon Emperor to be flustered. However, when the Demon Emperor's demonic aura came within 3 feet of Tianyang, it was completely wiped out by the true flames of destruction, unable to resist at all. At this moment, the all-heavens sword suddenly bloomed with endless brilliance again. The all-heavens sword was enraged. Although an artifact spirit with complete sentience had not been born, The spirituality of the all-heaven sword itself was enraged by the appearance of the power of the great Lord of Heaven. The demon emperor's projection of the great Lord of Heaven was only a projection. No one knew how much power it had in the great Lord of Heaven. And the all-heaven sword was Shun Tian Wuzuan's sword. I understand. Tianyang suddenly spoke, his eyes flashing with boundless killing intent. At this moment, he was not only fighting for Heaven Continent, but also for Shintian Wuzuan, who had been suppressed by the great Lord of Heaven, the almighty of the human race, Jiang Shuntian. And the demon emperor suddenly felt a sense of danger in his heart. His gaze instantly became much more serious. The huge demonic projection condensed 1,000 feet of demonic aura and materialized into a spear in the demon emperor's hand. Tianyang also gripped the all-heavens sword tightly in his hand. Tianyang Dai, demon sky-piercing spear. The demon emperor's face was ferocious. Holding the demonic sword that was no weaker than a half-sage artifact, he charged towards Tianyang fiercely. Behind him, there were thousands of demons. At this moment, Tianyang suddenly smiled. The undying bloodline bloomed. Stepping on the void, holding the long sword in his hand, he charged towards the huge demonic projection. 1 step, the space trembled. 2 steps, the blood sea churned. 3 steps, heaven and earth shook. With every step he took, this side of the world would tremble once. When he reached the 9th step, Tianyang's figure had already reached the high altitude. The aura gathered on his body could suppress the stars. Demon sky-piercing spear. The demon emperor roared and attacked with his spear. At this moment, Tianyang's eyes narrowed. The aura of a sage artifact bloomed. Sacred martial, heaven and earth-piercing spear. Tianyang roared and slashed out with the all-heaven sword. 10,000 swords returning to origin. Second sword. Boom. A sword light that resembled a long river descended from the sky and chopped off the demon lord's head. At the same time, Wuzun's power surged wildly. The huge demonic projection exploded. Sky-piercing 9 steps. Chapter 901. Sky-treading 9 steps, demon slaying with a sword. Although the 10,000 swords return to origin was a saint martial art, it only had the power of a half-saint martial art. It was still lacking when used against the shadow of the great Lord of Heaven. However, the universal perforation was different. It was a complete saint martial art, a saint martial art. Moreover, before using the universal perforation, Tianyang had taken 9 steps. It was one of the bloodline's superpowers of the immortal bloodline, the 9 steps of death. Every step of the 9 steps of death would accumulate a layer of death chi. When all 9 layers of death chi were condensed, it would unleash an extremely terrifying power. If Tianyang had only awakened the immortal bloodline normally, he might not have been able to use the 9 steps of death. However, he had comprehended the immortal will and achieved the immortal bloodline. Therefore, it was easy for him to use the 9 steps of death. It was also easy for him to destroy the shadow of the great Lord of Heaven. How is this possible? The demon emperor's expression changed completely at this moment. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was extremely pale. The huge shadow had a close connection with the demon emperor. Now that the shadow was destroyed, even the demon emperor's vitality was greatly damaged. If that was the case, the demon emperor's face would not be so pale. However, Tianyang's sword was too powerful. It had merged the 9 layers of death chi of the 9 steps of death and the monstrous wrath of a saint weapon. It was a saint martial arts sword. With 1 sword, the demon lord was destroyed. Even if there were 10 demon emperors, they would not be able to block such a sword. Tianyang is already so strong. Then, I can only run. This guy will definitely not be able to maintain this state. As long as I hide in the blood sea and wait for 8 to 10 years, Tianyang will definitely lose his power. At that time, I can return with glory. The demon emperor was indeed a scheming and ruthless character. He didn't care about his face as the demon emperor and directly turned around to flee. While the demon emperor had been in seclusion before, he had still been able to see how the Flame Devil King, Saber Devil King, and Shadow Devil King had died. If he had simply plunged into the sea of blood, Tianyang would have seized the opportunity to kill him. If he wanted to escape, the only way was to escape tens of thousands of miles away and dive into the depths of the Blood Sea. Devil Chi origin burn. Devil blood explosion. The Demon Emperor made a prompt decision. He immediately ignited his Devil Chi and Devil Blood and charged into the depths of the Blood Sea. In an instant, his speed produced an extremely terrifying sonic boom. His figure seemed to have teleported and directly disappeared from the spot. However, Tianyang's face was filled with indifference. Trying to escape? You're smart, but let's see if I can escape. Tianyang's gaze sharpened, and he instantly charged out. Behind him, monstrous waves of blood surged. The peak strength of half-step Wuzun was released. The space was distorted as he unleashed his secret technique. Boom! Tianyang's speed wasn't inferior to the Demon Emperor's at all. He flew toward the Demon Emperor. Along the way, the Blood Sea automatically rolled out a long passage. The air waves that spread out even directly killed the countless devil soldiers that the Demon Emperor had condensed with a flip of his hand. At the same time, the All-Heaven Sword also slashed out streaks of terrifying sword light. Damn it, he can still catch up. The Demon Emperor's expression changed drastically. He truly felt the threat of death. The Devil Shadow had been destroyed, and his strength had already been depleted by more than 30%. At this moment, even if he ignited his Devil Chi origin, it would be difficult for him to escape Tianyang's pursuit. Unless charged out of this world. I came from outer space. This world has a repulsive force against me. It's not too difficult for me to charge out. However, Tianyang is a native of this world. If I want to charge out of this world, I have to go through a great trial. This way, I can completely escape. Thinking of this, the Demon Emperor's eyes suddenly revealed a sinister look. Just you wait. When I return from outer space, this Tian Shao great world will still be mine. I'm afraid you won't have that chance. At this moment, a faint voice sounded, and it scared the Demon Emperor so much that his expression changed drastically. 10,000 demons break the heavens. The Demon Emperor roared and attacked with his spear. However, Tianyang casually slashed out with his sword. The All-Heavens sword bloomed and filled the sky with Shengguang. In an instant, that spear suddenly exploded. Damn it! Seeing this, the Demon Emperor's eyes suddenly turned blood red. The spear in his hand, which was condensed from the purest Devil Chi, was comparable to a semi-sage weapon and was fiercely shot towards Tianyang. Explode! The Demon Emperor roared. Suddenly, rays of terrifying light shot out from the inside of the Devil Spear. Seeing this, Tianyang's expression also became solemn. The Devil Spear's power was comparable to a semi-sage weapon. Because it was condensed from Devil Chi, it could not exist for too long. However, the power of its self-explosion might not be inferior to a real semi-sage weapon. Seeing Tianyang's expression change, the Demon Emperor immediately revealed a smug smile. It was still 1,000 years too early to kill him. However, at this moment, Tianyang suddenly revealed a smile. You don't really think that I'm afraid of this move of yours, do you? Tianyang chuckled. In the next moment, 5 stars directly appeared in this space. Stars imprisoned. At the moment of life and death, just now, Tianyang's 7-star secret technique had another breakthrough. Open 5 stars. Dubhi, Merak, Fekta, Migrez, and Alioth. If Demon Ancestor Wanxing used the power of 5 stars, he could easily suppress the half-step Wuzun. Moreover, Tianyang's first star had been opened to the perfect realm. The power of these 5 stars was even stronger than Demon Ancestor Wanxing's 5 stars. Boom! Under the Demon Emperor's desperate gaze, the 5 stars suddenly shot out indestructible star chains. They firmly imprisoned the Devil Chi spear that was about to self-explode. In the next moment, the Devil Chi spear calmed down, turned into Devil Chi, and was devoured by Tianyang. When the Demon Emperor saw this, his face turned pale, and he was in extreme despair. He originally wanted to use the self-explosion of the Devil Spear to trap Tianyang and even severely injure him. thus buying time to rush out of the Tianshao Great World. However, seeing this devil spear being so easily neutralized by Tianyang, the Demon Emperor knew. In this match, he had lost. There was no turning back once he lost. At this moment, the supreme aura that lingered around the Demon Emperor shattered with a loud bang. Even the Demon Emperor's cultivation base was rapidly declining. His cultivation base had been interrupted by Tianyang, and the cultivation base that he had gained was not stable to begin with. Now that his mental state was shattered, the cultivation base that he had gained from the refinement automatically dissipated. In an instant, he returned to the 9th level of the Heaven Ascension realm. In front of Tianyang, he was like an ant. If I have to do it again, I will kill you even if I have to use all the strength of the demon race. The Demon Emperor raised his head, and endless hatred flashed in his eyes. It was because of this person, a youth who was not even 25 years old. This was a war that was already set in stone. Only then would they lose. The demon race has already come again. Tianyang smiled faintly. At this moment, the Demon Emperor seemed to have realized something. His pupils shrank to the size of a needle tip, and he roared in disbelief. 10,000 years ago. Correct guess. No prize. Tianyang smiled slightly and slashed out with his sword. The third sword, life and death reincarnation. Boom! Under this sword, the Demon Emperor, whose cultivation base was only at LV9 of the Heaven Ascension realm, no longer had the power to resist. His body and soul were destroyed. The Demon Emperor, who had survived from the ancient earthly emperor to this day, was completely and utterly destroyed. Wait, Demon Venerable Hua Tian will not forget this emperor's death. The Tianshao Great World may not be destroyed, but you, Tianyang, will definitely die. The Demon Emperor's last words were still echoing in the world. On the other hand, Heavenly Sun's eyes drooped as a chilling light shot out of them. The great Lord of Heaven, I will go and find him. Chapter 902. However, even though the Demon Emperor is dead, I still have to clean up the mess he left behind. Tianyang muttered to himself as he looked at the blood sea below him. He was now standing in the center of the continent in the central region. However, this place was still covered by the sea of blood. If it was not cleaned up, the sea of blood would be destroyed. If he didn't clean it up, he was afraid that even if the Tianshao Great World wasn't occupied by the demon race, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth would decline greatly. At that time, it might be the end of another civilization. However, compared to 10,000 years ago, there were more seeds of fire. However, since there's nothing to worry about, this blood sea isn't a big threat anymore. Tianyang smiled and slowly sat down cross-legged in the air. His second martial soul talent was removed. The all-heavens sword in his hand flew out automatically and quietly floated behind Tianyang. Shen Tian Wuzun's power also automatically returned to the all-heavens sword. Tianyang's aura instantly recovered from the peak of half-step Wuzun to the peak of LV6 heavenly completion realm. If I absorb all of this blood sea, I might be able to break through to Wuzun's realm. Heavenly Sun smiled faintly and no longer hesitated, releasing 5 stars. Secret technique of the 7 stars, the power of 5 stars. 9 profound purification array. The 5 stars instantly released monstrous soul power. Lines of star patterns were released with the 5 stars as the foundation and Tianyang as the center. Under the command of Tianyang's half-primordial spirit, the lines of star patterns gathered and intertwined in the air. In a short while, they turned into a super array that covered a radius of 1,000 miles. No matter what, this blood sea was formed by the living beings of the Tianshao continent. Although there's no chance for it to be resurrected, I still have to convert it to be at ease. Tianyang muttered to himself. In the next moment, his soul power was released. The 9 profound purification formation that covered an area of over 1,000 miles was suddenly unleashed, and Xinguang filled the sky. At this moment, Tianyang raised both of his hands, and the blood sea's water surged up. When it passed through the heavy transformation formation, the black gas inside automatically dissipated turning into pure energy that poured into Tianyang's body. Still not enough. 9 mysteries, 9 heavens. Tianyang's eyes flickered sharply as he waved his hands, causing the enormous 9 mystical purification formation to split apart. The center of the formation was the largest, and it continued to shrink from top to bottom. In the blink of an eye, 9 spell formations had been formed. When the sea of blood passed through the formation, all of its resentment and obsession were purified. At this moment, Tianyang spoke again. The Demon Emperor is dead. The demon race is destroyed. You can rest in peace now. Immediately, the entire blood sea shuddered. The turbid black color that filled the blood sea immediately cleared. Countless amounts of blood sea's water automatically soared into the sky, passing through Tianyang's 9 heavens formation and turning into a part of Tianyang's cultivation. It was extremely difficult to break through the boundless spirit sea. Even if Tianyang was at the peak of Heaven Ascension Stage 9, to break through, he would need an almost endless accumulation of energy. However, at this moment, the blood sea that enveloped the entire continent was completely capable of shouldering this heavy responsibility. Then, many thanks. Tianyang smiled slightly and circulated the divine wilderness heaven spirit art. True essence rapidly flowed in the spiral meridians. The boundless blood sea's power immediately poured into Tianyang's body. It became a part of Tianyang's cultivation, just as Tianyang killed the Demon Emperor in the former central region. At the edge of the blood sea, at the former demon race's base camp, the demon race's soldiers have all disappeared. In the original demon race's base camp, there was still a portion of demon race's soldiers that had just been created and had yet to be killed by the Heaven Continent's allied forces. However, just as they watched Tianyang chase after the Demon Emperor and enter the demon race's base camp, they were shocked to discover something. The demon race's soldiers in the demon race's base camp were rapidly turning into blood water and merging into the blood sea. It's the Demon Emperor. These demon race's soldiers were all created through the Demon Emperor's power and have yet to fully form. Now that the foundation has been completed, according to common sense, if everything is normal, these demon race's soldiers should have automatically formed. However, they have dissipated. This means that their creator, the Demon Emperor, is dead. Zhou Tong, who was appointed as the Vanguard General, said excitedly. Hearing this, the old Dragon King, Shi Kaitian, Li Tianxin, and the others suddenly understood. Their faces were filled with excitement. Then, that means, that's right. Zhou Tong nodded vigorously. The Sword Emperor has killed the Demon Emperor. The news spread. The entire Heaven Continent was in an uproar. The Demon Emperor, as a shadow of the Heaven Continent, had shrouded the Heaven Continent for more than half a year. Although this half a year was just the blink of an eye for cultivators. However, the fear brought about by the Demon Emperor made countless people feel as if thousands of years had passed, making them feel despair. Now, the shadow that shrouded the Heaven Continent had dissipated. The Demon Emperor was dead. The demon race was destroyed. Now, let's wait for the Sword Emperor's triumphant return. Looking at the demon race's soldiers that had completely dissipated and turned into a part of the blood sea, Li Tianxin laughed loudly and flew away. Before he left, he did not forget to tear the demon race's base camp into pieces. The demon race's base camp was the demon race's last and strongest stronghold. The materials used to build this base camp were not ordinary. Although it was said that not every one of them could be a supreme grade spiritual weapon, if they were dismantled and forged properly, they could be made into many precious weapons and spiritual weapons. Because of the demon race's calamity, the living beings of the Heaven Continent would not let go of the last bit of value of the demon race. Of course, in reality, the Blood Sea's value was much higher than the demon race's stronghold. However, they had no choice. They could not absorb it, so they could only bring countless materials and more than 3 million injured soldiers back to the northern wilderness region. This was a great victory. They had completely destroyed the demon race, killed the Demon Emperor, and ended the demon race's calamity. This was a Pyrrhic victory. Even though they had won and killed the demon race's army of millions, the human race had also paid a heavy price. More than 2 million soldiers had died, more than 5 million were injured, and more than 100 million soldiers had died in the Blood Sea. From the beginning, there was no winner in this war. Time passed slowly. It had been 3 years since that great battle. The Blood Sea that covered 99% of the Heaven continent was slowly retreating. At this moment, everyone knew that in the center of the Blood Sea, in the center of the Heaven continent, there was a sword emperor devouring the boundless Blood Sea. After 3 years of devouring, the Blood Sea was only left with less than 30 cubic meters of space under Tianyang's feet. Tianyang's aura had also gradually increased after 3 years of cultivation. He had reached the peak of his combat strength in the past, half a step away from Wu Zun's peak. Boom! At this moment, Tianyang opened his eyes that had not opened for 3 years. The last bit of Blood Sea below him had also passed through the 9 mystic purification array and turned into the last drop of water in the boundless spirit sea. 3 years of accumulation. Let's use it today. Wu Zun break. Tianyang roared, and a rolling aura exploded from his body. In the next moment, in the sky, thunderclouds began to gather. Chapter 903. Wu Zun's tribulation had arrived. 3 years of accumulation had filled Tianyang's boundless spirit sea to the limit. Tianyang's soul power had long been infinitely close to the primordial spirit state. If he could survive this tribulation, Tianyang's soul would immediately condense into a primordial spirit. From then on, he would truly step into the realm of Wu Zun. Lord Tianyang is going through the tribulation. At this moment below Tianyang, although the central region was no longer as prosperous as before, there were still many humans living there. When they saw the heavenly sun, which had not moved for 3 years, suddenly stand up and thunderclouds appeared in the sky once more, everyone immediately understood what was going on. Tianyang was finally going through the tribulation. He was going through Wu Zun's tribulation. At this moment, Tianyang slowly stood up, and the all-heaven sword on his back automatically fell into his hands. At this moment, his realm had already reached Wu Zun's, and his physical body had also reached this realm. However, his strength was still a little lacking. This tribulation had come because of this lack of strength. Although Tianyang had already stepped into the realm of Wu Zun, he did not have Wu Zun's strength. He could only be said to be half of Wu Zun's strength. However, according to Tianyang's various magical powers, even if he encountered someone at the initial stage of Wu Zun, he would still be able to put up a fight. At this moment, the thunderclouds above Tianyang's head suddenly trembled and disappeared. The crowd below was puzzled. As they retreated, they guessed. The next moment, boom, a destructive thunderbolt tore through the void and violently blasted toward Tianyang. Tianyang snorted coldly, and the all-heavens sword swept out. The first move of the Sky Extreme Sword technique, Soaring Heavens. The sword slashed out, carrying with it a boundless fierce aura, and fiercely blasted toward the destructive thunderbolt. In the past, Tianyang had to activate the soul power of the peak of the Heaven Ascension realm to resist the destructive thunderbolt. But now it was as weak as tofu. With just one sword strike, he disappeared. The current Tianyang was much stronger than his previous life. The first attack is the Divine Thunder of Destruction. It is much stronger than the 5 elemental lightning tribulation, 6 flame tribulation, and 7 star wind tribulation. It seems like the heavenly Tao is still unwilling to give up. Tianyang smiled faintly. He looked at the divine thunder of destruction that pierced through the void and slashed out with his sword. Boom! The destructive divine lightning, which was far more powerful than the 5 elements lightning tribulation, exploded once again. At this moment, the entire continent could feel the terrifying power of the divine thunder of destruction. This was the main force of the great destruction of civilization 10,000 years ago. In my previous life, I died at your hands. However, your destructive divine thunder is clearly not as powerful as the one from the great destruction of civilizations. Do you think this kind of thunder can do anything to me? Tianyong could tell that the lightning tribulation was no longer striking through the thunderclouds. Instead, the world was attacking on its own accord, all for the sake of destroying him, a terrifying evildoer. However, Tianyong did not look surprised at all. He snorted coldly, looked at the three destructive divine thunders in the sky, and soared into the sky. Sky sword technique. Third sword, star burial. One sword, star river burial. The Tianji sword emperor, who was at the peak of the heavenly ascension realm, could destroy countless destructive divine thunders with this sword. Moreover, Tianyong was now Wuzun. With this sword strike, the three destructive divine thunders immediately disappeared. However, the heavenly Tao was not to be trifled with. The heavenly Tao naturally could not condense destructive divine thunders at the level of the great destruction of civilizations. Although it could not reach the quality, it could definitely reach the quantity. Boom! In terms of quantity, the terrifying lightning that was comparable to the great destruction of civilizations suddenly struck down like a thunderstorm floating in the sky. However, not a single one of those thunderbolts landed on the ground. All of them were unleashed to slay the heavenly sun. This time, there are no thunderclouds covering the world, but the world is attacking on its own accord. The old Dragon King, who had reached LV8 of the heavenly ascension realm and had rushed over after hearing the news, sighed as he looked at the figure in the sky and the endless destructive divine thunders. Tianyong is really too strong. He's so strong that even this world feels threatened. Although most practitioners will leave directly after breaking through to the Wuzun realm and head to a higher level world, the world still refuses to believe. However, the world was still unwilling to believe, even sending down such a thunderstorm to destroy the heavenly sun. The old Dragon King said. Hearing this, Sure Kaitian and Li Tianshun, who were at the peak of LV7 of the heavenly ascension realm, Sanguinati, who was at LV8 of the heavenly ascension realm, and the nine-tailed demon emperor, who was at the peak of LV6 of the heavenly ascension realm, as well as the rest of the alliance's upper echelons, couldn't help but turn pale with fright. Even the world wanted to destroy him. Had Tianyong's talent really reached such a terrifying level? In fact, from a heavenly tribulation that covered the entire world, it can be seen that the world is extremely afraid of Tianyong. It even wants to kill Tianyong at all costs. However, due to heavenly sun strength, he was able to survive that tribulation. Now, heaven and earth were going all out. The old Dragon King said. He was from the Dragon Clan and was familiar with all kinds of ancient books. He had a deep understanding of the secrets of the world. Hearing this, the nine-tailed monster emperor and the others looked even worse. Then Tianyong, I don't know. What made the nine-tailed monster emperor and the others despair was that even the knowledgeable old Dragon King did not know what to do. In the ancient books, such an existence was only the guesses of many ancestors. No one would have thought that the world could really give birth to an existence that the world is afraid of. It can be said that Tianyong is the first person who created the world. The old Dragon King said. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. If even the old Dragon King said so, then everything would depend on Tianyong's luck. At this moment, Tianyong's tribulation had reached its climax. Ha ha ha! Do you think this kind of destructive lightning can do anything to me? Heavenly Path, are you kidding me? Tianyong held the all-heavens sword and slashed out, shattering the surrounding space. Countless bolts of destructive lightning were swept away by the heavenly sun with the sword. Boom, boom, boom. As if in response to Tianyong's words, the heavenly path became extremely angry. It gathered lightning again and attacked. This time, it was not destructive lightning. Instead, it was the lightning that Tianyong saw in the Nine Palaces illusion, blood-colored lightning. It's him. Seeing this, Tianyong's face darkened slightly. He used the all-paths movement technique and retreated. The all-heavens sword in his hand slashed out again and destroyed the blood-colored lightning. However, the destructive lightning around him suddenly dissipated on its own. Then, there was a similar amount of blood-colored lightning as the destructive lightning from before. Seeing this, the old Dragon King's face changed. This is the legendary demonic blood lightning? Once the demonic blood lightning appears, even the world will have to pay the price. The heavenly path is really sparing no expense in order to kill Tianyang. The old Dragon King said in shock. Hearing this, Tianyang heard it clearly even though he was thousands of miles away. Demonic blood lightning? Looking at the demonic blood lightning around him, which was several grades higher than the destructive lightning, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. The next moment, Tianyang laughed heartily. This is my Wu Zun's tribulation. Take this. Chapter 904. He slashed out. The Tao of life and death and the Tao of the sword perfectly merged. Tianyang hadn't just spent the past 3 years in the devouring blood sea. Not only had he raised his true yuan to the peak of the half-step Wuzun, but Tianyang had also deduced the countless martial techniques in his mind. Tianyang originally had too many martial techniques, and none of them had been cultivated to perfection. After 3 years of accumulation, Tianyang had left most of the martial techniques he didn't need in the depths of his mind, leaving only the most important and the most essential ones to cultivate to the best state. Among them were the Tao of the sword and the Tao of life and death. These two Tao of the saint realm. Fleeting youth. Tianyang roared and slashed out. 2 rays of light, one black and one white, flashed out. In the next moment, the entire world seemed to have been cut open by this sword. It was split into 2 parts. One was a peaceful world under the great calamity. The other was a world where the blood demon lightning wreaked havoc during the great calamity. Boom! Heaven and earth trembled as the sword slashed out. The sword that had merged 2 Tao of the blood demon lightning was no longer something that the blood demon lightning could resist. In an instant, the blood demon lightning turned into nothing. It completely dissipated. However, Tianyang didn't let down his guard. No matter how strong the lightning tribulation was, it couldn't be the trump card of this world. If he wanted to destroy a peerless genius that could threaten him, the lightning tribulation alone was far from enough. To the world, the most effective way to destroy a genius was to summon a genius stronger than him. Last time, it was the Thunder Fire God's phantom that made me fight for a long time and awaken the undying bloodline. This time, it's that primordial emperor again. Tianyang smiled and stood where he was. He waited quietly for the phantom of the emperor to appear. Boom! At this moment, a thunderous sound rang out. A giant figure suddenly stepped out from the edge of the world. Lightning wrapped around his body. He held a giant hammer in his hand and had a ferocious expression. He was like a giant god that could destroy the world, carrying with him endless murderous intent. This is the ancient god of lightning. At that moment, the ancestral beast drawing spoke. The ancestral beast drawing came from the ancient era, thus it was familiar with some ancient powers. It immediately recognized the martial monarch's background. Upon hearing this, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. The ancient god of thunder was not a human, and he was abnormally tall. It was at least 10 meters tall, and its skin was a dark copper color. Strange lightning patterns were carved on its chest, and the huge hammer in its hand was no ordinary object. In the face of such an existence, even Tianyang had to be cautious. At this moment, the world suddenly distorted again. A figure walked out of the void. The pressure on Tianyang's body became even heavier. Tianyang's pupils constricted as he looked at the second figure walking over. It was also a projection of a primeval emperor and also a peak half-step into Wuzun. His white robe fluttered in the wind, and he held an agile longsword in his hand. His hair was white, and his face was handsome. Without a doubt, he was a human. Standing next to the ancient god of thunder, he looked very short. However, compared to the ancient god of thunder, he was much taller. The pressure of this white-robed man's aura was not weak at all. Primeval human powerhouse, Green Lotus Sword Immortal. The demon ancestor portrait's voice sounded like it was suffocating. Upon hearing this, Tianyang's expression changed. This time, it was not just one primeval emperor. However, just as Tianyang was about to start the battle, the void distorted again, and another figure walked out. He had a dragon head and a human body, with huge dragon wings behind his back. His hands were like dragon claws, and he was not much weaker than the green lotus sword immortal and the ancient god of thunder. Half-dragon supreme. The demon ancestor portrait spoke again. At this moment, 3 primeval emperors had arrived. Back then, there was only one Thunderfire Supreme being, and Tianyong was already on the brink of death. Now, 3 emperors had arrived at the same time. The entire world seemed to darken, and countless humans below fell asleep. Even the old Dragon King and the others, who were thousands of miles away, were filled with shock. Their faces were filled with shock, and they almost couldn't withstand the pressure and fell down. This is the heavenly tribulation that the heavens want to kill must endure. The old Dragon King was almost suffocating as he looked at the 3 emperors in disbelief. However, under Tianyong's shocked gaze, it was not over yet. The void distorted continuously, and the heavens seemed to want to kill Tianyong at all costs. At this moment, 6 figures walked out. One was covered in flames, and he was like the god of fire. His every move made the temperature rise exponentially. One was like the war's supreme being, with endless battle intent. His every move could destroy the heavens and the earth. One was without a human figure. His entire body was transparent, but he had terrifying soul power. 6 primeval emperors, plus the green lotus sword immortal, half-dragon supreme, and the ancient god of thunder. This time, there were 9 emperors in front of Tianyong. The 9 primeval emperors. Raging Flame Battle Soul, Sky Battle Emperor, Heavenly King Soul, Green Lotus Sword Immortal, Ancient God of Thunder, Half-Dragon Supreme. The demon ancestor portrait was almost in despair as he looked at the 9 emperors in front of him. It was too scary. Each of the emperors here could easily kill the primordial emperor Shirsu, the true martial dragon emperor, and the crimson dragon Wuzun. At this moment, the 9 emperors had come out together just to kill Tianyong alone. In order to deal with Tianyong, the heavenly Tao of this world had gone completely crazy. The 9 emperors were expressionless. They were just illusory figures recorded by the heavens and the earth in the primordial era. But just by standing there, it gave off a feeling of endless pressure that made one feel as if their bones were about to be crushed. Tianyong, break through the world barrier and escape. These 9 emperors were summoned by the heavenly Tao of this Tianshao great world at a great cost. They can only appear in the Tianshao great world. With your strength, you can already forcefully break through the world barrier. When the time comes, you can go through the heavenly tribulation in another world and become Wuzun. The demon ancestor portrait said anxiously. No matter how one looked at it, the 9 emperors of the primordial were too terrifying. However, at this moment, Tianyong smiled slightly. Same? If I can defeat the 9 emperors of the primordial and steal their power to become Wuzun, how can it be the same as simply passing the heavenly tribulation to become Wuzun? Are you crazy? The demon ancestor portrait said in disbelief. The primordial emperors were almighty figures who could turn the world upside down with a flip of their hand. No matter how talented Tianyong was, he was only a quasi-Wuzun. How could he fight against the 9 emperors of the primordial? However, Tianyong had already blocked the message from the demon ancestor portrait. Looking at the 9 emperors of the primordial in the sky, he could almost feel that the 9 emperors were looking down at him coldly. It was as if they were looking at an ant. The 9 emperors of the primordial? When the 9 emperors of the primordial were Wuzun, they might not be able to defeat me. Tianyong. Tianyong laughed loudly and charged forward with the all-heavens sword in hand.